Chapter 1685. Jeanne d'Arc, my Jeanne d'Arc, come out and see me, I am Gilles de Lays. After hundreds of years, we finally meet. A heart-wrenching voice resounded through the sky. Looking through the window, they saw a hideous, strangely dressed, devil-like figure appeared outside the castle of the Arensberg family. Is this guy Castor? Saber unexpectedly frowned. She didn't expect this guy to be so arrogant. He even dared to take the initiative to attack them. His behavior was not stupid but arrogant. After all, there were two heroes here, Dustless and Saber, but Castor was alone. It seems that he is alone, and he can't wait to die? Wei Gong Qixi looked contemplative, then his gray-brown eyes swept around, staring at the large forest in front of him. He seemed to be looking for Castor's accomplice. No, it's a miracle that this guy can come to us now. I thought he would come to us last night. Dustless smiled meaningfully. Castor is a serious infatuated seed. His obsession with love is admirable, but this time it's a pity that he is confessing his love to the wrong person. By the way, who is Jeanne d'Arc? We don't have such a person here. Wei Gong Qixi asked inexplicably. He instinctively smelled a conspiracy. Maybe someone else is framing us, trying to use us to fight Castor. That's a reasonable analysis. Wei Gong Qixi's lover Q Mei nodded. The relationship between these two guys is too good. If I kill Wei Gong Qixi, I'm afraid Q Mei will turn herself into a suicide bomber to kill me. Dustless glanced at the two people who were intimate. He muttered to himself, turning a deaf ear to their conversation. What he did not know was that through the gap of the door, a bright gaze was quietly staring at Wei Gong Qixi. She observed this scene with mixed feelings and disappointment. Her beloved husband was whispering to another woman. As his wife, how could Alice Phil be at ease? The Joan of Arc that guy was talking about. It's funny, but it's actually Saber. Dustless suddenly revealed an answer that made Wei Gong Qixi and Jiu Mami flabbergasted. Do you think we're idiots? Kuyu Mimi stared at Dustless indignantly. She felt that Dustless was just fooling them. It was ridiculous to say that he had mistaken her for someone else. If it wasn't Dustless talking nonsense, then it was Castor's brain twitching. Joan of Arc, my Joan of Arc, you finally came out to see me. However, the next sentence that Gilles de Rice said made Wei Gong Qixi and Kuyu Mimi furious. Gilles de Rice looked at Saber, who suddenly appeared with an excited and surprised expression as he shouted loudly, Jeanne d'Arc, my Jeanne d'Arc. Who would have thought that after so many years, we would have the opportunity to meet again, my Joan of Arc? Gilles de Les exclaimed excitedly. He almost stood up and began to dance. His eyeballs bulged outward as if they might fall out at any moment. That Castor is an idiot. Kuyu Mami stared at Gilles de Rice speechlessly. That guy was obviously out of his mind. Saber was King Arthur. She had nothing to do with Joan of Arc. The time difference between the two sides was thousands of years. It's a miracle that he can suppress himself until now. Dustless added again. However, this old guy's ability to rush to his death is really perfect. He knows that when the heroic spirits meet, it will be the end of life and death, but he still dares to take the initiative to come here. TSK, it's really hard to guess the thoughts of the infatuated man. Castor doesn't seem to be pretending. He seems to really think that Saber is Joan of Arc. Could it be that they look exactly the same? Wei Gong Qixi secretly guessed. He stared at Castor and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Suddenly, there was a flash of light in his mind. He seemed to have thought of something, and he showed an excited expression. This guy wouldn't want Saber to fool that super pervert who likes to kill people, right? Catching Wei Gong Qixi's strange expression, Dustless muttered with some uncertainty. With Wei Gong Qixi's character, he could really do such a crazy thing. In order to get the Holy Grail, sacrificing a heroic spirit, Wei Gong Qixi didn't think that it was not worthwhile. The so-called heroic spirit was actually like a chess piece. Mommy, come with me to see it. Wei Gong Qixi pulled Kuyu Mami and couldn't wait to rush to the scene. Seeing the brilliance in his eyes, Dustless guessed that this kid had thought of a sinister idea. Alice Phil, don't you want to see it? In the quiet corridor, Dustless stopped in front of the door of Alice Phil's bedroom. He leaned against the wall and sighed. This is inevitable. With your identity, you are destined to not live with Wei Gong Qixi forever. It's normal to have an affair. Even one day, Wei Gongqi will kill you personally to fulfill his wish. However, you are my master. I naturally won't let you get hurt. You can rest assured. This is my fate. From the moment I was born, it was destined. Looking at the beautiful scenery outside the window, Alice Phil's face showed a sad smile. As the vessel of the Holy Grail, her final fate was actually destined early on. No matter who the Holy Grail fell on, Alice Phil would inevitably die. Even if Wei Gongqi was the final winner, he would not let Alice Phil go. Don't be so pessimistic. There is a phrase called man can conquer nature. If you want, I can help you change your cruel fate and get rid of the shackles of the Ahrensberg family. Dustless yawned tiredly. He looked lazy, but his tone was firm. Chapter 1686. Castor, please don't confuse people here. I am not the Joan of Arc you are talking about. Saber looked at Castor's crazy eyes. Her nose wrinkled. She was disgusted. No, you are Joan of Arc. Castor shook his head stubbornly and said, Joan of Arc, have you forgotten me? I am Gillis Lesu. Have you forgotten me? Sorry, I don't know you. After searching her memory again, Saber was sure that she didn't know the inexplicable pervert in front of her. Damn it, damn it, damn it. My Joan of Arc doesn't recognize me. Hearing that, Castor was furious. He picked up the child he had caught before and crushed his head to vent his anger. Damn you, God. Is this all you're doing? Castor was furious. His face was extremely distorted. He threw the child's body on the ground and smashed it into a bloody foam to vent his anger. And he kept cursing the god with vicious words. You're such a crazy guy. Saber was stunned. She didn't expect that Castor would be so cruel. His actions could be described as the actions of a beast. Any normal hero wouldn't do such a thing to a child. Everyone had dignity and bottom line. Castor's cruel means were so vicious and vicious. If you continue to participate in the Holy Grail War, all the heroes will be insulted by you. So, please disappear, Castor. Saber's face turned cold as she rushed toward Castor with Excalibur in her hand, and the sword swept toward Castor's cheek. It's not that easy to kill me. When Castor saw that, he suddenly jumped back a few meters away. His crazy face showed a nostalgic smile, but it still looked so gloomy and terrible, even more frightening than his twisted face just now. If a demon who killed people like Scything Flax smiled at you like the sun, wouldn't you feel disgusted? Even Saber couldn't help but have goosebumps. Evil and crooked path go. Stop, Saber. At this moment, a stern voice stopped Saber's actions. Turning around, it was Wei Gongqi and Ju Yuwumi who had rushed over, covered in dust. Master, do you have any questions? Saber looked at the smiling Takashi. She suddenly had a bad premonition. She had to remind him. Master, this guy is an evil demon. Even children are not spared. We must get rid of him. After that, Saber stared at Castor again. Looking at his excited face, she knew that he was not a good person. Especially the way he stared at her. It made Saber even more disgusted. Saber, let me deal with this matter. However, Wei Gongqi didn't care about Saber's opinion. After all, she was just a heroic spirit. As for the child's corpse on the ground, although Wei Gongqi was sad, it was only for a short moment. Sacrifices were being made every day in this world. Only by obtaining the Holy Grail, the universal wishing machine, would all the disasters disappear. Castor, to be honest, this girl is your Joan of Arc. Pointing at Saber, Wei Gongqi's words made Castor happy, but Saber stared blankly at Wei Gongqi. She suddenly understood Wei Gongqi's plan. Master, please stop before you go too far. I can understand your eagerness to get the Holy Grail, but I can't accept such a despicable method. Saber was full of anger and said seriously, I am not Joan of Arc, my real name is Artoria Pendragon, King Arthur of ancient Britain. It doesn't matter, Saber. Takeo came to Saber's side and whispered, Saber, this is all for the Holy Grail. You also want to get it to fulfill your wish, right? So the necessary allies are indispensable. But if I cooperate with Dustless, we can defeat the other Servant. Saber argued. She despised Takashi's despicable method. Not to mention pretending to be Joan of Arc, Saber couldn't help but vomit when she thought of Castor's disgusting face. We have 2 heroes on our side, but we have an absolute advantage. But you seem to have forgotten one thing. What if the other heroes also learn from us and form an alliance? And we just got the information that Toshiomi Inosaka and Iskandar the Conqueror have come together. The same is true for several other heroes. Most of them have signs of forming an alliance with each other. In order to win the final victory, it's okay to use a despicable method, but a voice full of disdain fell into Takeo and Saber's ears. Dustless was extremely annoyed. Using your wife as a bait to attract the enemy, this method is disgusting. This is all for justice. Takeo loudly refuted. Bullshit justice. Pursing his lips, Wuchen ridiculed even more. His words made Juyuwumi's face turn red. If it weren't for the difference in strength, she would have beaten Wuchen up to vent her anger. Using Alice Phil as a bait? Saber looked at him blankly. She didn't know what Dustless was talking about. So you still don't know? Glancing at Saber, who didn't know anything, Dustless decisively revealed Takeshi's background and said, "The reason why Takeshi let the 3 of us act alone is actually to attract the other masters to assassinate us. He and Takeo hid in the dark to snipe the other masters, but this guy's plan was destroyed by me. I threw him into the Pacific Ocean to compete with sharks in swimming." Chapter 1687. How could he be so despicable? Saber was furious. It was fine if he was despicable to the enemy, but he was so shameless to his own people. Saber couldn't stand it anymore, especially when he intended to use his wife as bait. How could there be such a despicable person in this world? "Master, I will never acknowledge your twisted justice." Saber stared at Wei Gong Kisi's back. This guy was simply shameless. "You bastard! Are you trying to drive a wedge between us?" Juyuwumi grabbed Wu Chen's collar. When she was about to scold him, she suddenly felt that she was being stared at by a powerful creature. She felt a chill down her spine. It seemed that she might die in the next second. Her whole body was cold. She looked up and saw Dustless with a cold expression. His eyes were as deep as the abyss, making Juyumemi's soul tremble. This guy's eyes are so scary. Fear flashed through her eyes. Juyumemi quickly let go of Dustless's collar and took the initiative to put some distance between them. No matter what, Dustless was a heroic spirit, and she was just a mortal. The difference between them was countless dimensions. "Saber, don't listen to Dustless's nonsense. This is all a rumor he made up." Juyumemi glared at Dustless fiercely. Anyone could see that this guy was trying to drive a wedge between Saber and Wei Gong Kisi. No, what he said is the truth. At this moment, Wei Gong Kisi frankly admitted, "Just like what Dustless said, I plan to use Dustless, Saber, and Alice Phil to attract the attention of master and servant. This guy has guts." Dustless touched his chin and couldn't help but look at Wei Gong Kisi in a new light. But immediately after, Wei Gong Kisi lowered his voice and shouted, "I want to be a partner of justice. Some sacrifices are inevitable. Even if I kill Alice Phil with my own hands one day, I can't do anything about it." Whoosh whoosh whoosh. As soon as Wei Gong Kisi finished speaking, a black shadow approached him at the speed of sound. "Damn scum! How dare you use my Joan of Arc to attract other people's firepower? Go to hell and repent." Bang! Wei Gong Kisi was sent flying with a single punch, and even a few of his teeth were knocked out. His face was slightly sunken in, and there was a clear red fist imprint on it. And the person who attacked Wei Gong Kisi was Castor. Well done. Dustless gave a thumbs up to Castor. It was the first time he thought that the homicidal maniac was so cute. "Which side are you on, you bastard? Be clear about your position." Kuyumami's mouth twitched, and black lines appeared on her forehead. She loudly reprimanded Dustless. "Remember that you are Alice Field's servant, and Alice Field is Wei Gong Kisi's wife." "So what? That's their relationship. It has nothing to do with me. Although Saber and I are on the same side, it's hard to be loyal to such a master. It's fine if he plotted against others, but even Saber and I were plotted against by Wei Gong Kisi. Forgive me for being unable to accept this." Pfft. Kuyumami almost vomited blood when she heard that. She pointed at Dustless while trembling. She didn't expect that there was someone in the world who could be shameless to this point. Wei Gong Keisai planned to do this, but before all of this could be implemented, Wei Gong Keisai was thrown into the sea by Dustless to play a swimming competition with the man-eating sharks in the Pacific Ocean. Bang bang bang. Wei Gong Keisai, who was caught by Castor, was beaten violently. The power of a hero spirit was incomparable. With just a few punches, Wei Gong Keisai's cheeks were badly mutilated. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. At that moment, a ray of light rushed toward Castor's side, and a small foot covered with light hit Castor's ferocious face with full force. Lightspeed kick. Boom boom boom. That merciless kick sent Castor flying more than 10 meters away. He glanced at Wu Chun and Wei Gong Keisai fiercely, and then glanced at Saber reluctantly, and then he ran away awkwardly. It's not that Dustless wanted to save Wei Gong Keisai, but after that guy died, Saber would inevitably disappear. This guy is very cruel. I'm afraid that the recent child serial murder case reported in the news was done by him. Wei Gong Keisai stood up with an ugly face. He originally wanted to pull Castor into his camp. If the three servants joined forces, the Holy Grail would be easy to get, but who would have thought that this guy was so unreasonable? He beat him up without saying a word. Not to mention his teeth, in the end, he didn't even get a strand of hair. The most unbearable thing for Wei Gong Keisai was that he was beaten black and blue by Castor. Soon someone will clean up Castor. Dustless stared blankly at the disappearing Castor. He still remembered that in the original work, Enosaka Toshimi joined forces with the church and other masters to suppress Castor, and the final reward was an extra command seal. But in fact it was just a simple trap. Enosaka Toshimi and the church secretly colluded with each other. The essential purpose was to let the other masters fight, and in the end, the Hero King would solve the problem. The command seal naturally belonged to Enosaka Toshimi, but the Hero King disdained to deal with Castor. So Castor was killed by Saber. In the end, Enosaka Toshimi didn't even get a strand of hair, but gradually drifted away from the Hero King. Chapter 1688. Forget it, don't worry about that guy, let's deal with the others first. Suddenly, Wei Gong Keisai took a puff of his cigarette and said in a deep voice, Kenneth Elmeroy. This guy is our first target. As for Castor, let someone else deal with him. This guy, he actually wants to let Castor go? This time it was Dustless's fault. He still remembered that in the original work, the reward for killing Castor was a command seal. Such an advantage was enough to make all the mages crazy, and it was also a good opportunity to hunt other mages. But now Wei Gong Keisai was relieved. Dustless naturally felt strange. Could it be? As if thinking of something, Dustless's eyes fell on Saber's hand. No wonder Wei Gong Keisai didn't care about the swan meat, and went to deal with that stinky toad. It turned out to be the reason. Dustless glanced at Saber's left arm. Her wrist was wrapped in a white bandage. There were obvious bloodstains on the white bandage, which were very conspicuous. Lancer's noble phantasm, Yellow Rose, had a rather strange ability. It could cause irreversible damage. After being attacked by this spear, the upper limit of the HP would be reduced. Even if the user used healing magic or regeneration ability, they would only be able to recover to the injured state. The injured state would be maintained until the noble phantasm was destroyed or Lancer was eliminated. In other words, Saber's combat power was greatly reduced. Her ultimate skill, Excalibur, was also blocked by Lancer's noble phantasm. If she didn't kill Lancer, she wouldn't be able to use this ability anymore. But it's necessary to kill Lancer. I'm really sorry, Saber. Dustless walked to Saber and showed an apologetic look. Saber was stunned and asked, You didn't do anything wrong. Why are you apologizing? Alice Phil is my mater, and you hurt yourself to protect her. Of course, it's my responsibility. Dustless scolded himself for being careless. Back then, all he cared about was stepping on Gilgamesh. As for Alice Field, he left her to Saber as if nothing had happened. On one hand, he had to fight a strong player like Lancer. On the other hand, he had to protect Alice Phil. There was even the extremely despicable assassin who was secretly shooting him. It was normal for Saber to be injured. Don't worry about it. We were allies at that time. On the contrary, You were the one who defeated that golden archer. I should feel proud. That guy made me feel a little threatened. Saber's face revealed a delicate and gentle smile, which warmed his heart. It's best if you can participate. Wei Gong Qixi finally heaved a sigh of relief after looking at Dustless with a gloomy expression. He originally counted on Saber and Takumi Juyu to deal with Lancer together. As for Dustless, Wei Gong Qixi did not expect him to participate. For some reason, Dustless hated and even viewed him as an enemy. Therefore, in Wei Gong Qixi's plan, there was no script for Dustless to appear. Now that he was willing to take the initiative to participate in this hunt, it was for the best. Damn it, Lancer. Why didn't you join forces with that golden archer and berserker to kill the 8th heroic spirit? And those two guys, Saber? Bastard, who gave you the confidence to do that? In the luxurious apartment, Kenneth was angrily throwing a tantrum. The handsome man who was kneeling on one knee in front of him was his servant, Lancer. Facing the angry Kenneth Elmeroy, Lancer chose to remain silent. Lord, I will definitely defeat those two guys fair and square, and help you obtain the Holy Grail. Please believe me. I swear in the name of Delumudo Odina. Lancer swore with a serious face. Unfortunately, his master Kenneth did not buy it. Let me make it clear. This is something that should be done. Do you still need to swear? Are you saying that if you don't swear, you won't help me obtain the Holy Grail? Watch your tone, Lancer. Kenneth snorted coldly. Judging from his tone, he was treating Lancer as a useless tool. Kenneth's eyes became colder and colder. If he could, he would immediately change to a heroic spirit with a more flexible mind. Lancer, this guy, was getting more and more unpleasant to the eye. He was extremely annoying. Moreover, his thoughts were too stubborn. It was fine as long as he could obtain the final victory. It did not matter even if he had to use despicable tricks. In Kenneth's eyes, the so-called chivalry spirit was just bullsh*t. You can talk about the chivalry spirit with others, but would others abide by this ridiculous rule with you? It was still a sneak attack. Lancer, I really pity you. Your master is very similar to that guy Wei Gong Qixi. He would do anything to achieve his goal. A frivolous voice suddenly sounded. Kenneth and Lancer were stunned at the same time. They looked towards the direction of the voice at the same time. Outside the window, there was actually a figure floating. It's you. That smiling face of Wu Chen's fell into the two people's eyes, and was extremely asking for a beating. After that, Kenneth and Lancer both exclaimed. Among them, Kenneth's expression was the most interesting. He said furiously, "Impossible, I have set up a lot of..." Stupid thing. Do you think those tricks to trick children will work on heroic spirits? No wonder an idiot like you was killed by Wei Gong Qixi's plot. You're so stupid. Dustless sneered loudly. He snorted at the barrier that Kenneth had set up. Chapter 1689. Dustless was not looking down on Kenneth, but he was too naive. Although a magician was powerful, there was a huge difference between a human and a hero spirit. If the difference could be easily made up, why would a hero spirit be needed in a battle? Is this fella here to provoke me? Kenneth's eyeballs moved quickly as his face turned serious. Dustless was coming at them aggressively. It seemed like they had no other choice but to fight him. Your Majesty, let me have a fight to the death with this guy. Lancer stared at Wu Chun with burning eyes. His eyes were filled with a burning desire to fight. However, Kenneth, who was hesitant, ignored him. Idiot, don't you know there's a saying that there must be something wrong if something is out of the ordinary? Or are all hero spirits so stupid? There must be a trap for him to come to us. Kenneth stared at Lancer angrily and cursed him for being stupid. No, we can't fight him. We must drag it out. This fella must have set a trap for us since he came to us. Wouldn't we be idiots if we step on the landmine without hesitation? Kenneth shook his head decisively after pondering for more than 10 seconds. He smiled proudly as he stared at Dustless. I know what you're planning to do. Saber was stabbed by Lancer, and she can't use her arm anymore. Her combat power will be greatly reduced. You came to us in such a hurry because you want to break the curse on Lancer's relic, right? Yo, it's a miracle. You idiot, you're smart. Dustless was actually mocking Kenneth. But you're such a despicable person. Will it work if you reject me? You're so naive that I'll think that you're a kid. You want to force me to fight? Don't even think about it. Kenneth rejected him decisively, ignoring Lancer's burning desire to fight. He was sure that Dustless came to him, and there must be a trap for him. He would fall into the trap if he challenged him. It's good that we don't fight. Actually, compared to violent fights, I prefer things that men like to do. Dustless suddenly laughed sinisterly and teased. Oh right, I forgot to tell you just now. Your fiancé, Sora Naziri Sophia, is crying and begging you to marry her. TSK, if you refuse, then such a beautiful woman will be mine. You took Sola away? Bastard. Just when did the heroic spirits summoned by the Holy Grail War become so shameless and perverted? Damned bastard. Kenneth trembled as he pointed at Dustless. His vision turned black, and he almost passed out from anger. He stared straight at Dustless. The impact of these words was no less than being struck by lightning. As a heroic spirit, you are an out-and-out hero. You even use such a despicable and ugly method. Kenneth, who had regained his senses, was furious. He cursed Dustless in his heart for being so shameless. This bastard kept saying that he and Wei Gong Kisi were despicable, but they even kidnapped a hostage. Who could be more despicable than Dustless? TSK, this really has nothing to do with me. It was Wei Gong Kisi who did it. Dustless continued to laugh sinisterly and exerted pressure. He even showed an expression that said, "Don't blame me." He also pushed all the responsibility to Wei Gong Kisi. The so-called protagonist was actually used as a scapegoat. Master of Lancer, since you're not going to fight, then I'll retreat. She's called Sola, right? That beautiful woman is still waiting for me to spend the night with her. She's crazy about such a handsome heroic spirit like me. Dustless showed a strange and wretched expression that all men understood. Then he disappeared from Kenneth's sight. Plop. Kenneth, who couldn't take the blow, fainted. The moment he closed his eyes, Sola Nazili Sophia's sobbing face suddenly appeared in his mind, as well as Dustless, who was unscrupulously abusing her. Kenneth immediately stood up and kicked Lancer in annoyance. He roared furiously. Damn it, why are you still standing here, you idiot? Hurry up and chase after her. Do you want to see another green hat on my head? Kenneth roared in a deranged manner. He even cursed. Lancer's reaction to battle could be said to be perfect, but when it came to this kind of matter that concerned a man's dignity, he became nervous. Green hat. Lancer was stunned for a moment. Then he came to a realization after thinking about it carefully. He promised solemnly, "My lord, don't worry. Leave Madam's safety to me. Also, you don't have to worry. Madam will definitely not be charmed by that guy. Although he's more handsome than you. I believe that with your charisma, you'll definitely capture Madam's heart." Before leaving, Lancer suddenly advised Kenneth out of kindness. However, the latter only stared at Lancer blankly. That absent-minded gaze was obviously questioning. You and Dustless are purposely attacking me, right? Ka. Lancer stabbed the transparent tempered glass with his spear, and looked at Dustless's disappearing figure from afar. He decisively gave chase at full speed. You're quite fast. You've caught up in such a short time? Dustless turned his head and stared at the black figure that was gradually closing in on him. His cheeks no longer had the frivolous look from before. Instead, it was replaced by endless coldness. Damn that guy. Wei Gong Keisai doesn't deserve to be a magician. He even used such disgusting methods. I must personally chop him into 8 pieces to vent my anger. Kenneth clenched his fists tightly and gritted his teeth as he growled. He was really disgusted by Dustless. He pushed all the blame onto Wei Gong Keisai. Chapter 1690. Kenneth walked out of the apartment in a huff. He couldn't control the flames in his heart as he stood in the hallway. His spittle flew everywhere as he cursed Wei Gong Kisi for being despicable and shameless. He even cursed his 18 generations of ancestors. As a magician, he actually kidnapped someone else's fiancée to blackmail them. He was too shameless. What nonsense is this guy spouting? Kidnap his fiancée? Kisi, have you done such a thing before? Why didn't I know about it? In the underground parking lot, Wei Gongqi and Takeo Juyu were speechless as they were setting up the bombs. They had installed invisible listening devices in the entire apartment. Kenneth's cursing and scolding all fell into the ears of Wei Gongqi and Takeo Juyu. God knows what he's talking about. Especially Wei Gongqi. His face was almost the color of a pig's liver. He really wanted to grab Kenneth and beat him up, then ask him when he kidnapped his fiancée. This was completely unreasonable. Don't worry about such trivial matters. Our plan seems to have been superfluous. Dustless has already forced Kenneth out. He has set up all kinds of barriers and traps in this building. We will be at a disadvantage if we fight here. Let's go to Dustless' place and work together with him to get rid of Kenneth and Lancer. Wei Gongqi lit a cigarette and took a leisurely puff before saying, "Let's go to Dustless' place. Kenneth is probably rushing there as well." Under the black night sky, in an abandoned warehouse, it was as terrifying as hell. Sharp screams could be heard from time to time, and blurry ghostly shadows were reflected on the walls. Even breathing was several times more difficult than usual. "Don't kill me." Kenneth's fiancée, Sora, looked at the approaching figure in fear. Fear appeared on her delicate face. "That will depend on how you please me." The tone of boredom spread throughout the deathly silent room. Dustless sat on the chair with a lazy expression and looked at Sora, who was hiding in the corner. He realized that Lancer would still need a while to rush over. He stared at Sora's scared face and couldn't help but tease her. 10,000 mammoth heavenly attraction. A strong gravitational force erupted from his palm, and Sola's body floated over uncontrollably. "It's a long night. Don't you think you need some entertainment to pass the time?" Dustless grabbed Sola's throat and asked evilly, "As long as you don't kill me, I'll agree to any of your conditions." Sola looked at Dustless with a begging expression. "Really? That's for the best." Dustless pointed to his left and right legs. He closed his eyes and said, "Massage my legs. If I'm satisfied, you can leave here safely." "I understand." Sora nodded obediently before kneeling on the ground and massaging Dustless's legs rhythmically with her soft hands. Bang bang bang. Poochie. 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 After a few loud gunshots, Sola stopped moving and fell to the ground. The smell of gunpowder still lingered in the air. Dustless opened his eyes and looked at Sola. Her body was covered in blood and flesh. Her abdomen was also badly mutilated, and the finger-sized wound was clearly visible. A heroic spirit really knows how to enjoy life. Two silhouettes walked out from the dark corner. Looking sideways, it was Wei Gongqi, who was wearing black clothes, and his assistant, Takeo Juyu. "She's a scourge." Wei Gongqi glanced at Sola, who was unwilling to die, and said expressionlessly, "If you want to resent someone, you can only resent yourself for being Kenneth's fiancée. Do you think you can fool me with that ridiculous trick of yours?" Wei Gongqi. Lifting his eyelids, Dustless stared at Wei Gongqi's cold face and sneered. "Even if she wasn't Kenneth's fiancée, you still wouldn't let her go. For a person who was distorted by the so-called righteous companions, he wouldn't care how many people were sacrificed in order to achieve his goal. Anyway, in Wei Gongqi's eyes, these were necessary sacrifices." Sola. At the same time, a sorrowful cry sounded. Looking at the direction where the sound came from, it was Lancer and Kenneth. "Damned Wei Gongqi, Sola didn't participate in this war. Why did you do this to her?" Kenneth asked with red eyes, looking like a gambler who had lost everything. "Don't think that I don't know. Although you have signed a contract with Lancer, the magic that sustains Lackner is provided by this woman. She can only blame herself for this." Looking at Kenneth's eyes that were filled with hatred, Wei Gongqi answered frankly, "Lackner, I'll leave that heroic spirit to you. Get rid of these eyesores for me." Kenneth roared crazily. Dustless left Lackner to him, and he pounced on Wei Gongqi. He couldn't wait to die together with him. "I will definitely complete your mission, Lord." Lancer also stared at Wu Chun in an unfriendly manner. A shocking viciousness occasionally flashed across his eyes. "Bring it on, Lancer. This is your last performance. Try your best to dance. Don't disappoint me." Dustless, who was sitting on the chair, smiled. He supported his chin with his right hand and looked at Lancer with an expectant expression. "As you wish." Lancer's gaze froze and he stared at Dustless for a while. Then he turned into a straight black shadow and charged over. Meanwhile, Wei Gong Kisi and Kenneth were entangled in a fight. Chapter 1691. The dense cold light was coming at him at an extremely fast speed. Within a few seconds, Lancer, who was wielding his relic, had stabbed hundreds of times. Unfortunately, Dustless seemed to be omniscient as he was able to avoid the fatal attacks every time. God is really ruthless. Dustless took the initiative to communicate with Lancer as his body floated backward. Don't talk nonsense. Just bring it on. Lancer's eyes were as deep as the abyss as he held the crimson spear in his hand. Nonsense. Don't you think fate is cruel? God is really cruel and heartless to let the perfect me meet you who is full of flaws. Dustless sighed with extreme narcissism and looked at Lancer with eyes full of pity. You're too much. Hearing this, Lancer waved the spear in his hand again. The sharp tip of the spear pounced toward Dustless's head. Elemental transformation. Dustless's body was covered in a bright golden light, as he did not hesitate to use his best skill. Pfft! The spear fiercely pierced through Wu Chen's head, penetrating between his eyebrows. However, the strange thing was that there was no blood flowing out of the wound. Moreover, the feeling was extremely strange. It gave people the feeling that they had hit the air. What kind of hero spirit is this guy? Lancer quickly pulled out the relic that was pierced through Dustless's head. In an instant, the wound was healed at the speed of light. It seemed like nothing had happened at all. He stared at Dustless cautiously. His bottomless eyes were as terrifying as the abyss. Nature's attraction. He grabbed the air, and a strong gravitational force exploded. An invisible force distorted the surrounding environment. Wherever the gravitational force reached, the laws of physics would lose their effect and everything would float. Lancer was the same. Get over here. With a loud shout, the chakra in Dustless's body increased the output by a few times. Lancer, who was initially struggling, suddenly lost control of his body. You're courting death. A ferocious look appeared on Lancer's face. He simply stopped resisting and used the inertia of gravity to lunge at Dustless. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Lancer waved his spear with all his might, and the cold light scattered. It looked like Dustless's head was going to be pierced into a beehive. Lancer's idea was extremely crafty. There was no way to escape. No matter which direction he dodged in, he would be torn apart by the cold light. Die. Lancer seemed to have seen through Dustless's miserable death, and revealed a victorious smile. Bang bang bang. At the same time, a majestic repulsive force suddenly broke out of his body. Lancer, who was caught off guard, was also affected. His proud face instantly turned tragic. Shinra Tensei. Lancer's body was sent flying by the super-strong repulsive force. Ka ka ka. The hard wall was cracked by him, and there was even a dent in it. Lancer's mouth was stained with fresh blood. This guy can actually control gravity and repulsive force at the same time. Lancer wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. His whole body was in severe pain, as if he was being pricked by needles. He had to gasp for breath just to move his body slightly. It was extremely strenuous. If an ordinary person was hit, they would have been turned into a bloody pulp. TSK, your body is very strong. His eyes moved around Lancer. The bones in this guy's body were faintly showing signs of falling apart. It could be said that it was a miracle that he could still stand up. Humph, you're still far from defeating me. After taking a breath of cold air, the pain in Lancer's body eased a little. He stared at Dustless with a burning gaze. There was no sign of discouragement on his handsome face. I really don't understand people like you. You know that the difference in strength is like heaven and earth, but you still refuse to give up in the end. A tenacious spirit like perseverance can't make up for the difference in strength. Dustless shook his head to express his confusion. At the same time, a blue light appeared on his fingertips. Void flash. Boom. 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 The energy ball was flicked out by Dustless's finger and instantly annihilated Lancer. There was a violent explosion. Lancer did not even have the time to scream before he was eroded by the high-density energy ball. Plop. Lancer lay in the crater, his entire body charred beyond recognition. The high temperature from the void flash explosion had burned him to the point where he didn't even look like a human anymore. He was still panting, but his consciousness had already fainted. "Let me give you the final blow." Looking at Lancer, who was howling in pain, a big shiny sword appeared in Dustless's hand. The light that was reflected was accompanied by a scorching attack. It could easily burn the skin of a human with just a touch. "Damn trash, Lancer, this useless trash. It's fine if you can't help me at this time, but you actually want me to help you out. Useless trash." On the other side, Kenneth cursed fiercely. He did not expect Lancer to be so useless. After being beaten up by Dustless, he was coldly suppressed without even having the strength to retaliate. "Get lost." Swoosh swoosh swoosh. Kenneth suddenly got rid of Wei Gong Kisi and turned to Juyu Mommy, who had the weakest strength. He quickly grabbed her and subdued her in a flash. "That perverted heroic spirit, if you don't want this guy to die, quickly stay away from Lancer," Kenneth shouted at Dustless. He did not want to lose, nor did he want to withdraw from this Holy Grail war in advance. If Lancer died, it would mean that everything was over. Kenneth did not want to leave in grief. Chapter 1692. Staring at Dustless with a ferocious look, Kenneth glared back with a stern expression. However, Kenneth sadly discovered that although he was angry, the consequences weren't serious at all. Dustless stepped on Lancer's body and looked at him frivolously. "Miss Wummy, you should be very happy to die for justice, right?" Dustless stared at the pale-faced Juyu Wummy and sent Kenneth to hell with one sentence. Wei Gong Jishi's expression changed when he heard that. His eyes flickered, and no one knew what he was thinking. He remained silent. "Huh." Kenneth was hit hard by Dustless's words and said angrily, "You bastard! This is your master's mistress. Can you bear the consequences of her death?" No. Shaking his finger a few times, Dustless smiled indifferently and said, "I think Miss Wummy will be very willing to sacrifice herself." Juyu Wummy glared at Dustless and looked at him angrily. She stuttered for a moment and didn't know how to answer. If she could live, who would choose to die? Moreover, Juyu Wummy still hoped that after Alice Phil disappeared, she would become the official mistress and live the fairy tale life of her dreams. "It seems like you don't want to." Kenneth heaved a sigh of relief when he saw that. Joy appeared on his face. He was really afraid that Juyu Wummy would say something like, "I'm not afraid of death. I must kill Lancer," or something like that. Dustless, kill Lancer. At this moment, Wei Gong Jishi ordered with a cold face. "Are you crazy? This guy is your secret lover. Are you going to ignore her life and death now?" Kenneth shouted in disbelief. He must have investigated Wei Gong Jishi's matter clearly. The secret relationship between Juyu Wummy and Wei Gong Jishi naturally couldn't escape Kenneth's eyes. "Jishi." Juyu Wummy lowered her head with a complicated expression. Her eyes were filled with crystal tears. Swish swish swish. Suddenly an unexpected cold light attacked. Dustless was stunned. The moment he turned around, a cold light attacked his heart. Poochie. A blood-red hole appeared where Dustless's heart was. His whole body was pierced through by the cold light. If his heart was destroyed, even a heroic spirit would die. This sudden scene caused everyone to be stunned. They all stared at the figure behind Dustless in unison, and an unexpected figure appeared before their eyes. It was Lancer, who was severely exhausted. "Lancer actually sneak attacked me. Your knighthood spirit should be very valuable. You shouldn't do such a despicable thing like sneak attack." Dustless stared blankly at Lancer, who had a painful expression. "Ha ha ha ha." At this moment, an unusually proud laugh came from Kenneth's mouth. He was beaming with joy. "You bunch of idiots." With Lancer's character, he definitely wouldn't do something like a sneak attack. However, pointing at the command incantation on his arm, Kenneth laughed and said, "But if I were to use the Lancer to pretend to be dead and attack you, everything would be different." "Master, are you that despicable?" Lancer's face was filled with pain. Looking at Kenneth, who was laughing proudly, he did not hide the disgust deep in his eyes. "Shut up, you idiot. You've ruined my reputation, and now you've caused Sola's death. Do you still dare to blame me, you useless piece of trash servant? Moreover, I let you kill this guy. You should thank me. Kenneth laughed crazily, completely ignoring the knighthood. The masters of the Holy Grail War would not follow this idiotic and ridiculous fallacy. Swish, swish, swish. A straight ray of light cut through the dark and oppressive environment, turning into a sharp lightsaber, and went straight for Coney's, who was gloating. Poochie. This ray of light instantly pierced through his abdomen, and a hole the size of a human head appeared. His disgusting laughter also disappeared in an instant. Who did this? Ignoring the piercing pain all over his body, Kenneth looked for the initiator of the sneak attack. Ah. The culprit is right in front of you. What are you looking at? A lazy voice was heard. Kenneth immediately followed the voice and skimmed over. To his astonishment, it was dustless. You should be dead. Your wound has healed? Bullshit. Kenneth looked as if he had seen a ghost. He screamed in a panic. That's impossible. I ordered Lancer to destroy your heart. Destroying the heart will kill. That's for ordinary masters and servant. Don't forget, this guy is the 8th heroic spirit that shouldn't have appeared. His way of existence is special and unreasonable. The law that applies to ordinary people naturally doesn't apply to dustless. Takeo Juyu coldly glanced at Kenneth, who was stunned. She did not hide her sneer. Damn it. Sensing that his life was fading away, Kenneth was like a mad dog. When he wanted to drag Takeo Juyu down with him, it was already too late. Bang bang bang. A few shots were fired consecutively. Kenneth's head was shot into blood, leaving behind a few huge holes. He and Lancer finally disappeared together forever. With Lancer's death, the curse left on Saber's arm also disappeared. We finally got rid of Lancer. It's a success. Let's go back, Takeo Juyu. Wei Gongkisi showed a rare smile and took the initiative to greet Takeo Juyu. He wanted to give her a warm hug, but who knew that this guy only nodded coldly. Although they won this war, Wei Gongkisi also lost the people's hearts because of it. Chapter 1693. Serves you right. Glancing at the indifferent Juyu Mamie, Dustless wasn't surprised. Wei Gongkisi was someone who could sacrifice others for his own justice, so it was normal for him to be hated. His protagonist aura was also limited. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Ignoring Juyu Mamie and Wei Gongkisi, Dustless turned into a flash of light and disappeared from sight. Cough cough Mamie, I have something to say. Awkwardly coughing twice, Wei Gongkisi revealed an apologetic expression and cleared his throat. When he was about to apologize, Juyu Mamie's words made him raise his eyebrows. Maybe the so-called justice that I insisted on before was wrong. Just like what Dustless said to Aliceville a few days ago. Creating a world where there is only justice? Our dreams might be too illusory. Juyu Mamie's eyes lit up, and her light tone carried a sense of relief. People don't have to bear anything when they are alive. As long as they feel happy, it is enough. The person who can decide their own fate is often themselves. This is what Dustless said. You. Wei Gongkisi was dumbfounded. Damn, do you need to be so deceptive? How could a heroic spirit's casual words be able to turn his best friend who had followed him for many years? This is simply too deceptive. What kind of charm does that kid have? Wei Gongkisi's weathered face had some other emotions: jealousy. Don't listen to Dustless's nonsense. He is just a heroic spirit. What is there to listen to the words of a dead person? Mamie, don't be deceived by him. Wei Gongkisi nervously explained. The young woman in front of him was his spiritual food. If Juyu Mamie betrayed him, just thinking about the consequences made Wei Gongkisi break out in cold sweat. Ever since Dustless, this jinx, appeared, his former best friend, even his servant, became unreliable. Dongmu City, Ahrensburg family's villa. What should I eat tonight? In the brightly lit luxurious villa, Dustless was rushing to the dining hall. After the big battle, his stomach was grumbling in protest. Saber, is it just you? Where is my master Aliceville? After stepping into the restaurant, Dustless looked around and found that Saber was the only one who hungrily devoured the dazzling array of food. She was so fast that it was shocking. It was hard to imagine that such a petite girl would have an even more terrifying appetite than a burly man who had been starving for more than 10 days. It seems to be in another room. The people from the church have rushed over. It seems that they have a mission for Alice Field. Sebra's mouth was covered in grease, and she blushed when she realized that she had lost her composure. A notice from the church? Hearing that, Dustless frowned and asked, "If it's the church, they can use familiar demon to go there. Why did they come here?" "I can only ask Alice Phil about the specifics. I don't know what they're talking about. But before that, I want to thank you." Sebra walked in front of Dustless and smiled sincerely. Then she bowed solemnly. "The curse on my arm has disappeared. You killed Lancer, right? No need to thank me. It's just a small matter. We don't owe each other anything from now on." Dustless didn't mind. He had a good impression of Saber. Besides, Saber was injured because of his own carelessness. Ta-ta-ta-ta. At the same time, the sound of hurried footsteps suddenly came from the corridor. Looking up, a flawless face and straight white hair invaded his eyes first. Looking closely, it was Alice Phil. "The Church of Holy Light wants us to stop the Holy Grail War immediately and kill Satyr temporarily," Alice Phil said happily. "After completing the mission, we'll receive a command charm. What's going to happen can't be stopped." Dustless sighed. Then he asked curiously, "I heard that the person who came to inform us is someone from the church. Is it Yen Fengqi Li? In the previous battle, his assassin was killed. I remember that he applied for the church's protection." "It's not Yen Fengqi Li, but the person who came to inform us is related to him." Alice Phil shook her head and gave an unexpected answer. "It's his father, Yen Fengqi Li. I heard from Satyr that he's the supervisor of the Holy Grail War." Saber nodded slightly and didn't suspect anything. Then she explained, "Since it was sent in the name of the church, there shouldn't be any shady dealings behind this mission. I guess all the masters will participate. Even if they can't get the command charm, they don't want the enemy to get it." "Supervisor? Are you talking about that old man, Yen Fengqi Li? In fact, he's already in cahoots with Toshiomi Nagasaka." Dustless curled his lips and said disdainfully, "That old man is in cahoots with Toshiomi Nagasaka. As for the supervisor, it's even more ridiculous. Yen Fengqi Li, the son of Yen Fengqi Li, is participating in this Holy Grail War. All fairness has become unfairness." Also, Dustless's face fell. He sneered in his heart. "That old man has a bunch of command charms. He can give them to whoever he wants. He's a big problem. I might as well kill him." Since the word fairness had lost its meaning, then the supervisor, Yen Fengqi Li, had also lost its meaning. In the dead of night, Dustless's clone secretly snuck into the church and secretly killed off Yen Fengqi Li. Yen Fengqi Li was present during this, but he couldn't do anything against Dustless. He could only watch helplessly. Chapter 1694. Bang bang bang. There were a few crisp sounds coming from Toshiomi Inosaka's house. Toshiomi Inosaka lost his usual calmness. His face was ferocious, and he even smashed some delicate porcelain in anger. Looking at the fragments all over the ground, even so, the raging flames in Toshiomi Inosaka's eyes were still burning. He still couldn't suppress the anger in his heart. Yen Fengli was dead. This sudden news hit Toshiomi Inosaka a lot. Yen Fengli was one of his important allies. With a special relationship with the church, he could also cheat, but now, in short, Toshiomi Inosaka was very angry now. "Master!" An old-fashioned, emotionless voice invaded his ears. Toshiomi Inosaka immediately changed his face. As a noble magician, it was necessary to pay attention to elegance at all times. "Kaylee? I am deeply saddened by the death of your father." Toshiomi Inosaka showed a painful and sad look. After all, it was his important ally. It was normal to be sad when he died. "But," Toshiomi Inosaka continued, "I hope you can continue to maintain the relationship between the church and the Inosaka family, so that it will be good for both of us." "I will, master." Yen Fengli still nodded with no expression. In fact, he didn't have any sadness or tears for Yen Fengli's death. Not even a trace of tears. As for the reason, Yen Fengli didn't know. One day later. What, you ordered us to kill Castor? In the villa of the Ahrensburg family, Dustless stared at Kimiko Kissy and Alice Phil. His head was buzzing. He had already killed Yanfeng and Li Zheng, so this boring mission should be over. Is there anything wrong? Kimiko Kissy looked at Dustless's eyes and asked faintly. Dustless raised his eyebrows when he saw this. He thought to himself, it seems that the people of the church have sealed off the death of Yanfeng Rizheng. It should be Tashimi and Yanfeng Kaylee who did it. These two guys are really shameless. They actually want to get something for nothing. Since Yanfeng Rizheng was dead, the quest reward of killing Satyr and obtaining a command seal was obviously not going to be fulfilled. However, Toshiomi Inaka and Yanfeng Rizheng were still trying to trick everyone into fighting Satyr. What else could it be other than trying to gain something without risking anything? Not only that, the overseer of the Holy Grail War had been killed. This meant that all the illegal activities in the past had become legal. All sorts of crazy methods could be used. Anyway, this time, it's going to be a luxurious hunting feast. Dustless and Saber are responsible for dealing with Castor, and I'll secretly snipe the other masters. Wei Gong Kissy's eyes lit up. Since the masters chose to stop the Holy Grail War and temporarily kill Castor, then this mission must gather all the masters. Wei Gong Kissy could also hide in the dark and kill them one by one. Despicable. Saber snorted with dissatisfaction. She was very unhappy with Wei Gong Kissy's behavior. Wu Mi, come with me to prepare. Wei Gong Kissy completely ignored Saber's complaint and left. Dustless, you also need to prepare a little. Even if we can't get the command seal, we can't let it fall into the hands of others. Looking at Dustless's lazy eyes, Alice Field solemnly reminded him that Castor violated the rules of the Holy Grail War and killed innocent people. This is entirely for his own selfish reasons. His master is also not a good person. Saber, who had a strong sense of justice, hated Castor deeply. She couldn't wait to get rid of him. Not only Castor, but his master is also a pervert. Not only is he not a good person, but that guy also discussed the fun of killing with Castor. Dustless rolled his eyes and said, the combination of Yu Shenglong Jijia and Castor was definitely the most perverted kind. That. Dustless, actually, I have a very puzzling question to ask you. Alice Field stared at Dustless suspiciously and said the doubts in her heart. Sarvant's existence needs its master to provide mana. Why don't you need me to provide mana? This. Dustless stared at Alice Field. He really didn't know how to answer this question. That's because my own mana is extremely large. I don't need the master to provide mana. After being silent for a long time, Dustless made up a somewhat reasonable reason. He was not a real heroic spirit, and he didn't need any mana to fight. The command seal on Alice Field's wrist was just for show. It was wishful thinking to control him. The situation is indeed like what Dustless said. Even if Msater suddenly dies, as long as the heroic spirit's own mana storage is high, it is not difficult to maintain the body. Saber stepped forward to help. She stared at Dustless in disbelief and exclaimed, you should have consumed a lot of mana in the previous battle. Yet you can still maintain your physical form without being affected. How ridiculous is your mana storage? That's not the point. Dustless looked at Saber's admiring face and coughed twice embarrassedly. How could he maintain the body forever? It had nothing to do with the mana, because Dustless himself was not dead. Naturally, he could maintain the body indefinitely. As for the huge amount of mana that Saber said, Dustless didn't even have a trace. Chapter 1695. It was a stinky underground sewer. There was dirty black mud everywhere. The smell was disgusting. It was similar to the rotten smell of animal corpses. And the gloomy environment was like the legendary underworld. Boom, boom, boom. The ground trembled, and many cracks appeared on the solid floor. A huge hole appeared, and the bright sunlight shone in. Those two guys really know how to choose the place. There was a sound wave in the quiet atmosphere, followed by Saber's light voice. Compared to this, I'm more concerned about how they survived here. Dustless touched his chin and looked curious. He sniffed slightly. The rotten smell made it difficult to breathe. That makes sense. Saber nodded. Castor and his master could survive in such a harsh environment. Castor and his master were amazing. But Dustless's right eye changed, and a mysterious blue and white eye appeared. He could see through the boundless darkness, and the scene in the distance could be seen at a glance. According to Sesse's information, this seems to be the location of Castor's magic workshop. There should be a big harvest, Saber said with an expectant tone. There is a big harvest, but the result may be the opposite of what you think. Dustless looked at Saber with a deep look, then he shouted. Fire release, great fireball technique. Boom boom boom. The huge fireball rushed out, and the originally dark and strange environment was instantly lit up, and the shocking scene was also reflected in Saber's eyes. Damn it, how can he do this kind of thing? Castor, that bastard. Why didn't his master restrain that crazy guy? Saber clenched her fist and cursed, her voice was trembling. Looking around, there were countless children's corpses. You let Castor's master restrain him? Saber, with all due respect, Yuxinglong Jijia's level of perversion is no worse than Castor's. They are very close, just like lovers. As a transmigrator, Dustless knew that both of them were perverted murderers. Ouch! A hoarse roar suddenly rang out, accompanied by a violent tremor. In that instant, the entire Dongmu city trembled slightly. Even though the fluctuations were minuscule, Dustless still managed to catch them. Follow me, Castor is on the sea. Dustless flashed and appeared in front of Saber in the next second. Ignoring her shocked expression, he grabbed her slender waist and leaped into the air. You. Everything happened too quickly. By the time Saber regained her senses, she found herself in the sky with Dustless. Saber, who was being hugged by Dustless, blushed slightly. Her body temperature was rising rapidly, and her cheeks were burning hot. She clutched the corner of her shirt tightly, looking as if she wanted to say something but stopped herself. She looked extremely nervous and awkward. This is the first time I've been carried in the air by someone. It feels pretty good. Saber lowered his head and looked at the entire Dongmu city. The boundless city was in his eyes, and the light gathered into a large area. The scenery was so beautiful that he felt a little infatuated. By the way, which era are you from? Dustless. And your name is very strange. It seems that there is no hero that matches your identity. In addition, there is another important question. Saber stared at the face in front of her seriously and said, Some of your abilities don't seem to belong to a hero. No matter what kind of heroic spirit it was, there was one thing that could be confirmed. He had once appeared in the track of history. As for Wu Chun, it was as if he had appeared out of thin air. There was no information to be found, not even the most basic clues. Which era are you from? Actually, I don't know myself. Dustless gave a ridiculous answer, which made Saber roll her eyes. I'm telling the truth. Dustless smiled bitterly. After all, he came from another dimension. Only God knew how many years ago he came from. Ow, ow, ow. Dustless flew farther and farther, gradually approaching the answer. Purple light surged on the surface of the sea, and the beast's roar was getting closer. In a trance, he could see an extremely exaggerated black shadow. I never expected the two of us to be the last to arrive. Even the Hero King is so diligent. After passing through the layers of light, Dustless and Saber landed at the harbor. They looked at the super monster and frowned at the same time. You sure know how to put on airs. The two of you are the slowest. An unruly voice sounded from the sky. Dustless and Saber looked at each other and saw the helplessness in each other's eyes. They did not need to look to know that the owner of the voice was the problematic child, Gilgamesh. Lancer doesn't seem to be here. The Conqueror King, Iskandar, rode on the Divine Might Wheel. Although it was not as dazzling as Gilgamesh, it looked quite domineering on the surface. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. Looking up in the sky, there was an aircraft with a golden hull inlaid with unknown emeralds flying in the sky. The person who was operating it was the arrogant Hero King Gilgamesh. Lancer and his master were killed. Naturally, they won't come. Gilgamesh said indifferently. There was no fluctuation in his tone, as if he was talking about insects. This upstart's temperament hasn't changed. Dustless shook his head and sighed. Everyone received the order to eliminate Castor. Whoever killed Castor first would be the winner, and could get a command seal from the church. However, according to Dustless's guess, this must be a lie. Yanfengli was already dead. Ow ow! The giant sea monster screamed crazily. It exposed its saw-like teeth and its countless tentacles that flapped its wings and tried to attack Gilgamesh in the sky. However, the distance was too high, and the sea monster couldn't attack Gilgamesh. Bastard, you want to touch the glory of this king? Go to hell and repent. The void behind Gilgamesh rippled, and countless divine weapons flashed. When they were about to attack the sea monster summoned by Kstur, there was a sudden change. Ow ow ow! An even more ferocious voice suddenly sounded. A monster wearing black armor and a helmet with red light flashed. He was standing on a fighter jet and had launched 2 missiles while Gilgamesh and the sea demon were fighting. Boom boom boom! The aircraft driven by Gilgamesh suffered heavy damage and splashed a huge fireball, which was particularly spectacular. TSK, why did the Hero King do this? Dustless shook his head when he saw it. He clearly saw that Gilgamesh fell into the black stinky sea. He was afraid that this guy's lungs were about to explode. Chapter 1696. Woo woo woo. The monster's gigantic mouth emitted a hiss as it spewed out a viscous liquid that resembled ink. The unlucky Hero King had just crawled out of the water when he was attacked by the mysterious ink. His body stank as it emanated a nauseating stench. Oh, it's really embarrassing. Is it appropriate for the ancient king to fall into such a miserable state? Dustless laughed. Archer, if you can't beat Castor and Berserker, you can kowtow and beg me. Beg me? Hearing Dustless's harsh laughter, Hero King Gilgamesh immediately glared at him and gnashed his teeth. He couldn't wait to swallow Dustless alive. Boom! Suddenly the disgusting sea monster waved its tentacles and attacked Dustless and others. At the same time, they could hear, Jean d'Arc. Damn God. Needless to say, the culprit must be Castor, that perverted monster. Overconfident, and I repeat for the last time, I am not the Jean d'Arc you said. Saber snorted, holding her sword with both hands. Excalibur shot out a huge golden light, and a huge slash emerged. Whoosh! The incoming tentacles collapsed in an instant, destroyed by the huge light. The tentacles that were dancing wildly also stopped. At first glance, everything had returned to its original tranquility. It doesn't seem to be anything special. Saber was full of confidence. Gulp. However, the good times didn't last long. The tentacles that were cut off grew new tentacles again, and they were thicker and bigger than before. This is... Saber frowned slightly, and when she was about to attack with her sword, Dustless stopped her. This is the sea monster summoned by Castor's noble phantasm. The only way to break it is to use a decisive force to defeat it. Otherwise, this sea monster can regenerate infinitely. Infinite regeneration? Saber frowned when she heard this. Castor was unexpectedly difficult to deal with. Infinite regeneration. This was the first time she encountered such a tricky ability. Oh Golden Glitter, as long as you use EA, you can crush this monster. That command seal is also your master, Inaka Tashimori's. Dustless said with a smile. What's wrong with this guy's eyes? Gilgamesh met Dustless's gaze and felt displeased in his heart. He had a feeling that all his secrets had been seen through and seen through. He was fuming with anger. How can this king's supreme artifact be used to deal with this kind of garbage? Don't joke, I won't take back what I threw. Hero King Gilgamesh looked arrogant, and he disdained to attack Castor. It's just a bunch of toys. If you throw them away, so be it. Why do you care? Dustless asked calmly. At the same time, a large amount of light swept out from behind him. The golden halo covered the entire sky, and thousands of divine weapons stood out. Gulp! The heroic spirits and the masters were all shocked, looking at the light above Dustless's head. Looking closely, there were more than thousands of noble artifacts. That damned imposter. Seeing this, Hero King Gilgamesh wanted to cry. He found that the way others looked at him had changed, as if the ability of Gate of Babylon was stolen by him from Dustless. If this guy really has the same ability as me, then he can definitely use that. Gilgamesh's old face was incomparably gloomy. His own unique move had been played by someone else so skillfully. He felt particularly uncomfortable in his heart. However, the next scene also confirmed Gilgamesh's conjecture. Buzz, suddenly, a dazzling light swept out of the void, and a strange spiral sword slowly floated out of it. At the moment when the big sword flashed, the void was filled with an indescribable ominous feeling. Even Dustless had not made a move. The sky had already broken. Is this your real noble artifact? Dustless. Saber stared at the ominous blade, and she also felt an unprecedented destructive power and a huge sense of oppression. This strange sword was even more powerful than her Excalibur. Noble artifact? Kind of. The star of creation Enuma Elish has the ability to break the world. Staring at the huge sea monster in the distance, its horrible shadow flashed and kept coming to the shore, intending to destroy the entire Domu city. Castor. You and Joan of Arc will meet again in the next life. Glancing at the sea monster, Dustless indifferently waved a huge light. Annihilate him, EA. Boom. The huge slash whistled out, and in an instant the vast sea was split open, and the slash rushed straight to Satyr. Whoosh. The sharp slash made a horrifying sound as it tore through the air, causing people to feel dizzy. Even the ordinary people who rushed over after hearing the sound were unable to withstand the powerful pressure, and had their eardrums shattered. Damn, it's so strong. Castor, who was hiding in the huge sea monster, looked at the light of destruction, and his back was cold, and he quickly controlled countless tentacles to block it. Poochie. However, the dying struggle was useless. The tentacles were crushed by the strong hurricane and turned into a drizzle, powerlessly sprinkling on the sea. Boom. The dazzling slash finally pierced through Satyr, destroying it in one move. Its huge body instantly exploded. Chapter 1697. Boom boom boom. Castor's huge body exploded. It was spectacular. The whole sky was occupied by the fragmented body fragments, slowly falling. It was no different from a fine drizzle. It's that simple? Sarvant, who recovered from the shock, looked at the duo of Dustless and Saber with a speechless face. Of course, the main focus of their attention was still the calm Dustless. Especially when the hero king was Gilgamesh. When this fellow saw Dustless take out an EA that was identical to his eyeballs nearly popped out. Hey, Golden Glitter Archer over there, I have something to ask you. Conqueror King Iskandar drove the Wheel of Divine Power to land next to Hero King Gilgamesh and asked, "How did you steal that guy's ability?" "You bastard, get away from this king." Gilgamesh was about to explode when he heard that. Gate of Babylon was his unique ability. Now Dustless could use it inexplicably. Not only that, but he, the real one, was also treated as a fake. In fact, it was not only Ryder who thought so. The rest of the masters and Sarvant had the same idea. When Golden Glitter used Gate of Babylon for the first time, it was destroyed by Berserker, but now Dustless showed the true strength of Gate of Babylon. It was no wonder that everyone was daydreaming. Well, I will find a chance to let you witness the gap between a fake and a real one. Hero King Gilgamesh snorted angrily and left. He was very angry with today's battle. In Osaka's mansion. "Kiri, our plan needs to be modified. The 8th hero is very strong. I used to think that Gilgamesh was the strongest, but now it seems that I was wrong." In Osaka Toshimi's face was full of decadence, and his eyes were full of unwillingness. Yes. Judging from the battle just now, Gilgamesh may not be his match. Yenfeng Qili maintained his composure. But only this time he looked at Inosaka Toshimi's eyes. There was a strange light, like a hungry beast. No one knew what he was thinking. "Kiri, I have something for you." "Poochie." Suddenly Yenfeng Qili attacked. He didn't give Toshimi a chance to finish his words. He used a dagger to end Toshimi's life. There was a visible bloody hole in his heart. "Poochie." As if afraid that Toshimi Nagasaka's death wasn't complete enough, Yenfeng gave him another stab. I treated you so well. And I even wanted to avenge your father. Tell me everything you want to know. Why are you so vicious?" Toshiomi Inaka's lips trembled as he asked. "Avenge my father?" Yen Fengqili followed and then said expressionlessly, "As expected, master, you don't understand me. My only regret is that I didn't kill my father with my own hands. Archer and I will finish the mission you didn't finish," Yen Fengqili said coldly and turned to leave. However, he did not see that in the dark room, a pair of bright eyes were watching this scene in a daze. "So that's how it is, Gilgamesh, that bastard betrayed me." Tashimi Nagasaka was unwilling to cry, but Yen Fengqili turned a deaf ear and left with no expression. Tashimi Nagasaka didn't have much time. "We seem to be late." Outside Tashimi Nagasaka's house, Dustless, Saber, and Alice Phil looked at the gloomy building. Saber and Alice Phil's delicate eyes wrinkled. They looked at each other and could see the confusion in each other's eyes. "The reward for defeating Castor is to find the church. Why do you come to Tashimi Nagasaka's house now?" Alice Phil was full of questions. "Yen Fengqili is dead, and his son Yen Fengqili is colluding with Tashimi Nagasaka. What's wrong with the son's debt?" Dustless asked flatly. "It seems that no one is here." Alice Phil pressed the doorbell, but no one responded for a long time. "I smell blood." After a long silence, Saber suddenly interrupted and said, "It seems that someone is dead here." "Could it be?" Dustless heard the words and kicked open the door of Tashimi Nagasaka's house. According to his vague memory, he searched for the trace of Tashimi Nagasaka. Soon, the three of them passed through the tunnels and walked to an old door. Woo-woo. Just when they were about to open the door, an unexpected sobbing sound was the first to enter their ears. "Let's go in." Dustless and Saber looked at each other. Saber opened the door, and Dustless blocked in front of Alice Phil to prevent any accidents. Poochie. Saber pulled out the sword of Excalibur and easily broke the door. She thought she would meet Servant of Tashimi Nagasaka, but when she saw the blood-red figure, she was stunned. Sure enough, Yen Fengqili still killed Tashimi Nagasaka, and is still in cahoots with Archer. Are the two of them really that compatible? Dustless whispered to himself, and then glanced at Tashimi Nagasaka's body. No, he was still barely breathing, and his heart and another knife wound were temporarily bandaged, but he was not far from death. Akui Nagasaka and Rin Nagasaka? He glanced at the two of them in surprise. Apparently, they helped Tashimi Nagasaka temporarily treat his wound. Strange, I remember that they left Dongmu City. Dustless whispered secretly, his mouth squirmed, and when he was about to speak, Tashimi Nagasaka's old and desperate voice sounded first. Chapter 1698. I'm sorry, Miss Alice Field. It was rude of me to let you see me in such a sorry state. Tashimi Dosaka's tone was very subtle. Due to the distance, Alice Phil could not hear his words clearly. She did not understand what he meant. Master Enosaka, please speak your mind. Alice Field took a few bold steps forward, taking the initiative to approach the dying Tashiomi Enosaka. Dustless and Saber were both here, so she did not have to be afraid of Tashiomi Enosaka's schemes. I would like to entrust the mother and daughter to the care of the Einsbaron family. Tashiomi Enosaka glanced at Kue Enosaka and the teary-eyed Rin Enosaka. He lowered his head in shame, then put on an apologetic expression and blamed himself. Now that things have come to this, I won't blame anyone. I can only blame myself for being blind. It's fine if I die, but I don't want to implicate Kue and Rin. You just realized that you were blind? Wu Chen snorted when he heard that. His face was full of ridicule and disdain. This guy was too self-righteous. He thought that he controlled the master who had calculated everything. That was why he was killed by himself in the end. Watch your tone. I won't allow you to look down on my father. A girl with a ponytail and emerald eyes suddenly appeared in front of Dustless. Her angry eyes locked onto him, and she shook her fist threateningly. She looked like she would beat him up if he dared to talk nonsense again. This little girl. Seeing this, Dustless could only roll his eyes. If it was any other heroic spirit who provoked him, he could have beaten them up to vent his anger. But if it was a little girl who was not even 10 years old. Rin, shut up. He's right. I was too complacent in this Holy Grail war, so much so that I neglected the dangerous people around me. Tashiomi Enosaka waved his hand with the last of his strength, then looked at Alice filled with hopeful eyes. The Inosaka family will withdraw from this Holy Grail war. I hope that you can take care of the mother and daughter for me. Alice hesitated for a moment when she heard this. Looking at Toshimi's pleading eyes, she couldn't help but feel pity for him. In the end, she gritted her teeth and said, "All right, I agree to your choice. If that's the case, then I can die in peace." Hearing this, Toshiomi Inosaka smiled and left the mortal world. In the end, he closed his turbid eyes in satisfaction. What a farce. However, Toshiomi Inosaka still has some conscience. At least he's better than the scum who used his wife as bait. Dustless couldn't help but shake his head. He vaguely understood Toshiomi Inaka's intentions, and his impression of him changed slightly. Nothing was absolute. It was one thing if Yenfeng Chili killed Toshimi, but what if he attacked Rin and Koei Toshimi as well? It wasn't impossible. Yenfeng Chili was a temperamental person. No one knew what he would do. It was normal for Toshimi to leave his family in Alice's care. He could use this opportunity to protect Sang. Moreover, the Toshimi family had already withdrawn from this Holy Grail war. They were no longer a threat to the Ahrensburg family. We won't be able to get the command seal. Yenfeng Chili probably took it all. Let's go back. After a few hours, Dustless and the others finally left the Toshimi family. During this time, they held a funeral for Toshimi. Aliceville also took the initiative to comfort Rin and Koei Toshimi. The orphan and widow were quite pitiful. On a bustling street, the car Dustless and the others were in stopped in front of a supermarket. Aliceville said that she wanted to help Rin and Koei Toshimi buy some basic necessities. Women sure have a lot of things to do. They're always like this. Sitting in the car, Dustless's casual words attracted 3 hostile gazes. He turned around and saw that it was Saber, Rin, and Koei Toshimi. Cough, cough, cough. That was a slip of the tongue. After Wu Chen cursed his bad luck, he immediately apologized. They were living under the same roof. He could offend a strong man, but he definitely couldn't offend a woman. You guys wait here. I'll go see why Aliceville is so slow. Seriously, it's just buying some necessities. Does she need to take so long? Dustless complained as he got out of the car. Just as he was about to close the door, an unexpected figure grabbed him. A strong man with red skin reached out and grabbed Dustless's shoulder. His rough face was filled with a bold smile. He waved the huge wine barrel in his other hand and laughed. Isn't this the 8th heroic spirit? Let's drink together tonight. I even invited that guy Gold Sparkle. A banquet between kings isn't something that can be casually attended. Do you want to come? This person was Ryder, the conqueror king Iskandar. His master was Weber Velvet. However, Dustless only glanced at him in boredom and said dispiritedly, "Sorry, I'm just a normal person. I'm not interested in the banquet of kings." Hey, don't reject me so coldly. Even if you're not interested, I remember that your ally Saber is a famous Night King. She should be interested in this kind of thing. Ryder didn't care about Dustless and looked at Saber in the car. Night King, what do you think? Don't you want to discuss the path of kings with other kings? Ryder asked expectantly as he got into the car with his rough face. Sorry, Conqueror King. My attitude towards this kind of thing is the same as Dustless. Saber also shook her head and refused to participate in the banquet of kings. Chapter 1699. Oh, this is really giving me a headache. Seeing that Dustless and Saber were not interested, Ryder could not help but sigh in disappointment. He lowered his head, looking rather disappointed and depressed. Hurry up, Ryder. Don't think that everyone is as bored as you. The thin figure behind the broad figure urged impatiently, staring at Dustless fearfully. Ryder's master, Wilbur Velvet, felt a lingering fear as he looked at those dark pupils. The 3 heroic spirits that had died so far were all killed by Dustless. Wilbur Velvet had even secretly given Dustless the nickname, Heroic Spirit Killer. Sorry for the long wait, it took a while. Aliceville rushed out of the supermarket with an apologetic smile on her face. When I saw the dazzling products, I was a little. Ryder? Are you here to declare war? Seeing Ryder and his master, Alice Field frowned in doubt. I was thinking too much, I'll take my leave. Ryder gave Alice Field and Dustless a reassuring look, then left with his master out of extreme boredom. That's strange. After returning to the car, Dustless stared at Ryder's back that had not yet disappeared, muttering suspiciously, "Is there something wrong? I don't think Ryder and his master have any intention of attacking us, and Ryder doesn't look like a heroic spirit that would attack others." Saber, who was in charge of driving, replied. She had done a lot of research on Ryder's personality. "That's not what I meant." Dustless shook his head, then explained softly. "What I meant was, it's strange that Ryder gave up so easily. In my impression, Ryder would definitely pester us to participate in the king's feast. But I'm curious that you rejected it. You and I are different. You were once the king of ancient Britain. Your identity is very suitable to participate." Saber's eyes flashed with a complicated sense of desolation. But she did not explain further. In the blink of an eye, it was nighttime. "Ha ha ha." Bold laughter resounded through the sky. Looking at the rough man in front of him, Wu Chen sighed. Sure enough, he fixed his eyes and saw that this guy was Ryder. "Well, I'm really sorry." Wilbur Velvet hurriedly bowed and apologized. He had tried his best to stop Ryder, but the guy was determined and insisted on drinking with Dustless and Saber. "Ryder, you bastard," Saber frowned as she stared at the big guy in front of her and warned. "Your actions can be seen as an invasion. We can forcibly expel you." "Hee, since I'm here you won't be able to chase me away, right? As the saying goes, those who have nothing to lose are not afraid of those who wear shoes." At this moment, Ryder placed the wine barrel on the ground and said with a look of indifference, "As the Night King, you shouldn't be so petty." "Forget it, sit down." Dustless shook his head helplessly and gestured for the two to sit down. At the same time, he glanced at the dark corner on the left. "Hero King, are you a street rat? Hiding at home every time? Are you afraid of dying in the light?" Dustless's sudden sarcasm stunned Saber and Ryder. They looked at the east corner at the same time. A golden light flashed and a man in golden armor appeared. "Your eloquence is stronger than your strength." The arrogant archer Hero King appeared and said proudly, "The protagonist is usually the last to appear. This is common sense. The minions that come out early are the first to die. So in this war, this king is destined to have the last laugh." "Archer, Lunatic's personality hasn't changed at all. Do you still think you can get the Holy Grail?" "To be honest, I'm already a little desperate." Taking a glance at Dustless, Ryder sighed and immediately poured himself a glass of wine. At the same time, he also handed a glass of wine to Dustless and Saber. Compared to the arrogant archer Hero King, Ryder knew his strength better. "Humph, bastard, pay attention to your words." The Hero King archer swept an unfriendly glance at Ryder, and immediately stared at Dustless and Saber with his torch-like eyes. He announced loudly, "It's not about obtaining the Holy Grail. The so-called Holy Grail was originally this king's. It's just returning it to its rightful owner. Another thought is that this king wants to teach thieves like you who attempted to steal my treasures a lesson." This guy's head must have been crushed by a door. Dustless scanned the Hero King archer with a look of pity. Immediately, he began drinking to drown his sorrows. After all, they were all kings. He did not have such a status, so it was inappropriate for him to interrupt. He just needed to stay out of it. "Archer, the next time you talk big, you'd better build an iron tongue." Saber mocked the Hero King coldly. This guy didn't even blush when he lied. It was obvious that he was an expert. "Iron tongue?" Hearing this, Archer frowned and pursed his lips. Then he asked in puzzlement, "This king's tongue isn't wrong. Why do I need an iron tongue?" "You don't even know this?" Dustless exposed him with a smile. "The next time you talk big, you won't sprain your tongue. After all, it's made of iron." With that said, everyone roared with laughter, ignoring the livid Hero King. Chapter 1700. When the Hero King heard the duo's mockery, his nose nearly went crooked from anger. As everyone knew, he had a bad temper to begin with. He never knew what it meant to endure humiliation. He had always believed that the heavens were number one, And he was number 2. No, he had always believed that the heavens were number 2, and that he was number 1. Now that he was being humiliated and ridiculed in public by Dustless, he gritted his teeth in anger as his facial expression twitched. Unlucky. The Hero King cursed silently as he picked up the wine barrel and began drinking. Gulp. Gulp. Who knew that the Hero King would spit it all out after taking 2 mouthfuls? He cursed at Ryder. Preposterous. Giving the king such trashy wine to drink is blasphemy. Trashy? Blasphemy? Ryder was secretly rendered speechless as he retorted. This is already the best wine on the market. A bastard who has never seen the world. I knew you would say that. The Hero King curled his lips in disdain, and immediately threw an exquisite golden wine cup to Dustless and company. This king had once collected some of the treasures on the ground. The best things in the world are all mine. Wine is no exception. Don't you have such an ability as well? Saber leaned close to Dustless's ear and whispered into it. She said strangely, "This fellow can't be your biological brother, right? Both of you have the same ability." Ha! Dustless's drunkenness disappeared from Saber's question. He looked at Golden Twinkle, who had an explosive expression and was rendered speechless. If he was my biological brother, I would have long been killed. According to Archer's personality, what you say makes sense. Saber, who was taken aback, nodded resolutely. Phew. That feels great. After Ryder finished drinking, he used his hazy drunkenness to say loudly, "After obtaining the Holy Grail, my wish is to be reborn and conquer this world again. I want Iskandar's name to spread to every corner of the world. If that's the case, then the Holy Grail is destined to pass you by, Conquest King." Swirling the red liquid in the wine cup, Dustless explained, "Your name has already spread throughout the world. No, that's history. I want to rule the world again." Ryder shook his head like a rattledrum. "By the way, Dustless, what's your wish?" Saber blinked her eyes and asked with a hint of anticipation in her tone. Saber wasn't the only one who was curious. Even the Conquest King and Hero King had put down the alcohol they had brought to their mouths. Their eyes circled around Dustless. "My wish, huh?" Dustless thought for a moment, and to his dismay, he realized that he did not have a single decent wish at the moment. Even if he had a wish, it would be impossible for him to fulfill it with the power of the Holy Grail. "I don't have any wishes." After a while, Dustless gave an answer that left everyone speechless. "I don't have any wishes either." The Hero King immediately added, "All the treasures in the world belong to this king. That so-called Holy Grail is no exception. Participating in this boring war is only to teach you lawbreakers, thieves who wish to steal my Holy Grail, a lesson. You and Archer seem to have the same ability. Is there such a thing as the Holy Grail?" Saber asked Dustless. "No." After thinking about it carefully, Dustless replied decisively. "Ha ha ha." The Hero King smiled proudly and pointed to Dustless and said loudly, "There is definitely no fake, so this king is the real one." In the past few days, the Hero King had been gloomy. Since Dustless used the treasure of the king to defeat Castor, all the masters and heroic spirits regarded him as a fake. "No, you misunderstood me." Glancing faintly at the Hero King, Dustless suddenly said, "My treasure of the king are all killing weapons. Even if I have something like the Holy Grail, I don't remember it. Who knows, I might have even thrown it away. I'm a person who doesn't like to collect worthless items that take up a lot of space." This time it was Saber and Ryder's turn to be speechless. Both of them were local tyrants. "Get the Holy Grail. I will change the history of the destruction of ancient Britain." Saber's eyes shone with a cold light, and her eyes were as dazzling as diamonds. Who would have thought that as soon as these words fell, it immediately attracted the ridicule of the Hero King and Ryder. "Ryder, did you hear that? This naive little girl actually did such a thing." The Hero King laughed as if he heard the funniest joke in the world. "If your dream is just like this, then I will never recognize you as the king." Although Ryder was not as exaggerated as the Hero King, he also shook his head and held a negative attitude. "What's wrong with saving your own country? Don't you two have any regrets about the destruction of the country you loyally protect?" Saber asked angrily, feeling that her dignity was trampled on. Never regret. The hero king and rider were determined, and their resolute tone didn't seem like they were lying or deliberately attacking Saber. The king acknowledges it, the king allows it. The king carries the entire world. The king is the absolute controller, a unique existence. Wanting me to die for others is simply wishful thinking. The hero king said loudly, while the conquest king nodded thoughtfully. It dealt a blow to Saber as she involuntarily looked at the silent Dustless with her despondent eyes. To be honest, I have never been a king, nor do I understand what the so-called king's way is. Looking into Saber's eyes, Dustless said the answer he once got. I have lived for so many years, and I have concluded my own principles. There is no right or wrong in this world. Just do as your heart wishes. Walk your own path, and let others say what they want. Everything is fine as long as you have a clear conscience. Chapter 1701. Walk your own path. Let others talk about it. Upon hearing Dustless's words, the hero king and conquest king simultaneously figured out the meaning behind it. They nodded in unison as their eyes emitted a bright glow. Be it a king or a commoner, all they needed to do was follow their hearts. There was no right or wrong. Everything could be decided according to their will. I never expected this inferior impostor to have such a different view of things. Shaking the golden cup in his hand, the hero king did not hesitate to pour the scarlet liquid into his mouth. That makes sense. There is no right or wrong in this world to begin with. At the end of the day, everyone just has different standpoints. Nodding his head, the conquest king also accepted Dustless's explanation. Immediately he sighed and said, "The onlooker sees things clearly. Perhaps it's precisely because you aren't a king that you can see things more clearly and feel more at ease." What a great wise man. Dustless did not reply when he heard that. He stood up and stretched his back. After loosening his muscles, he said, "I can't be considered wise. At the end of the day, it's just that I've lived a little longer than all of you. I'm a little tired. I'll head back to wash up and sleep. Goodbye." Just as his voice faded, Dustless did not give them a chance to react. His body gradually lost its texture as it transformed into streams of light that filled the sky like countless fireflies. In an instant he vanished from the trio's eyes. What an unfathomable fellow. The hero king and conquest king were dumbfounded. After carefully sensing the situation, they shook their heads. Despite not having any magic power and having a combat strength close to 5, he was surprisingly powerful. He had beaten all the heroic spirits to a pulp. Currently, all the heroic spirits that had been killed were all Dustless's doing. "Thank you, Dustless." Saber's eyes were filled with gratitude as she swept a glance in the direction where Dustless had disappeared. She had been dealt quite a blow by the hero king and conquest king, who echoed each other, to the point of hesitation. If not for Dustless lending a helping hand at the critical moment, Saber would have found the confidence to stand on her feet despite it being an insignificant sentence. "Ah, a bunch of kids who haven't grown up yet. How dare you talk about the ridiculous way of the king in front of me? Should I say that you guys are naive or ignorant?" In the brightly lit corridor, even in the dead of night, it was still shining brightly. The corridor was filled with straight murals, giving it an indescribable elegance. In any case, a rich family like Einsbellen didn't lack money. Using a popular saying, "I'm a fool with a lot of money." Creak! Just as Dustless pushed open the door of his room, and was about to turn on the lights to take a shower, he strangely found that all the chandeliers in the room were on. Not only that, when he walked into the bedroom, he saw 2 figures on his bedding. Dustless was immediately dumbfounded. The 2 uninvited guests in the room were not the most bizarre thing. The most bizarre thing was that these 2 figures were not wearing any clothes. Their exquisite and flawless skin was completely exposed to Dustless's sight. Get lost, pervert! The atmosphere was tense for a few seconds before a few pillows were thrown at him. Upon closer inspection, the 2 figures were actually Rin in Osaka and Kue in Osaka. Wait! With a flick of his finger, Ryatsu shredded all the pillows. After taking a closer look at the furnishings in the room, Dustless confirmed that he didn't walk into the wrong room. He shouted angrily, This is my room without a doubt. The two of you are sleeping in my room without a doubt. There's no doubt that the two of you are the intruders. How did I become the pervert? Don't you get it? This castle doesn't have any extra rooms for us to use, so your room is being used. Emir Einherjar should feel honored. Rin and Osaka and her mother hid under the bedding with red faces. Ha! Dustless was speechless as he looked at the arrogant Rin Tasaka. This bullshit explanation was too far-fetched. The Ahrensberg family was a nouveau riche. The castle was as big as a few football fields. How could there not be a few rooms for people to sleep in? I'm really sorry, Mr. Einherjar. It was Miss Alice Phil who arranged for Rin and me to stay here. If you are dissatisfied, Rin and I can leave. The gentle and virtuous Kue in Osaka explained. That's not necessary. You can sleep here for now. I'll go ask Master if there are any other bedrooms. Good night. Dustless turned around and closed the door. Then he walked towards Alice Phil's room. Unexpectedly, as soon as he opened the door, he saw her arguing with Wei Gong Kisi. Their faces were red, and it was obvious that they were both angry. How strange. The two of them can argue? Dustless had a strange expression. In his impression, this couple had always been the type that stuck together like honey. It was unprecedented for them to argue. I have something to do, so I'll leave first. Take care. Seeing Dustless appear, Wei Gong Kisi left with a gloomy expression. Alice Phil, you too. Dustless stopped himself. After all, this was a matter between the couple. As an outsider, he had no right to interrupt. Do you want to ask about Kue and Rin? I'm sorry, Dustless, but this is something I allowed. Alice Phil explained with a bleak expression. Her bright eyes clearly understood Dustless' intentions. Is that so? Dustless nodded slightly. He couldn't help but ask, then where's my new room? No, there's no new room. I deliberately let you two sleep together. Alice Phil shook her head. Then, she revealed a meaningful smile. Her face was very pale, and her smile looked more like a forced smile. I know why you want to ask, but this matter is very special. I can only wrong you for now. Special? Dustless smiled bitterly. Even if it was special, he couldn't betray his teammate. Even if he had a reason, he couldn't. Chapter 1702. As she looked at the aggrieved Dustless, the resentment on Alice Field's face was completely wiped away, and a wisp of a heartfelt smile flashed on her jade-like face. What's so funny? Dustless rolled his eyes and asked. He felt that this girl was gloating. Sigh. Alice Phil frowned inside. Her delicate face gradually lost its luster. She said sadly, Kisi wanted to kill the mother and daughter. I couldn't bear it. So we inevitably quarreled. Kill the two of them? Are you referring to Tsukasa in Osaka and Rin in Osaka? Kisi seems to be a righteous partner. Is there no reason? He doesn't look like someone who would kill the innocent. Are you mistaken? Dustless frowned. Although he was ruthless, as long as those people didn't resist and restrain themselves, he could let them go. Of course there is a reason. Although what Kisi said is reasonable, I have already promised Toshimi and Osaka. If I hurt the two of them again, I can't accept it. Alice Phil, you didn't do anything wrong. Dustless smiled and encouraged her loudly. You did the right thing. Remember, you are a human with flesh and blood. You are not a puppet created according to Kisi's plan. There is no need to follow his will. So you agree with my way of doing things? Alice Phil retracted her sadness and revealed a cheerful smile. Of course I agree. Dustless smiled and reached out his hand. He added in his heart, as long as Kisi likes it, no matter if it is right or wrong, I will stand on his opposite side. Alice Phil organized her thoughts and explained, Miss Wumi, I just received news that Yadong Yeyen from the Yadong family is also participating in this Holy Grail War. And the reason is related to Tsukasa in Osaka and Rin in Osaka. The reason why Kisi asked me to kill the two of them secretly was to prevent Yadong Yeyen from finding out that Tsukasa in Osaka and Rin are living in our house. Otherwise, Yadong Yeyen's berserker will very likely attack us. The enemy will also have an opportunity to take advantage of. Until now, Kisi is still afraid of Yen Fengqi. Is that the only reason? Wei Gongqi's words make sense. Dustless nodded in agreement. This reason was barely acceptable. If Jantong Yiyan really knew that Kuei and Ling were here, he would definitely lead the Berserker army to attack the Einsbaron family. But, changing the topic, Dustless glanced at Alice and Phil suspiciously. Then they can also live with Saber. There's no need for me to live with them. Alice, Phil, I also think that the mother and daughter can sleep with me. Don't you trust my ability? At the same time, Saber grumbled. For some reason, when she heard that Dustless was going to sleep with Ling and Kuei, she felt a little jealous. After all, they were allies in the trenches. It did not feel good to have them taken away from her just like that. Have the Hero King and the Conqueror King left. Noticing Saber's appearance, Dustless instinctively looked out of the window. The place where they were drinking was empty. The Hero King and the Conqueror King seemed to have left. This banquet could be considered the best banquet. If they were to meet again, they would fight to the death. That's a good idea, but it's impossible. Alice Phil's face was filled with worry. She decisively rejected the idea. That's impossible. You're Qix's master. What if he uses a command spell on you? Although the probability of Wei Gongqi using a command spell on such a trivial matter was close to zero, nothing was absolute. It was better to be safe than sorry. Moreover, Wei Gongqi was a person who was difficult to grasp. Moreover, in this Holy Grail War, all of Wei Gongqi's command spells remained intact because of Dustless. Until now he had not used a command spell on Saber. Even if he were to use a command spell on Saber, it would not be a big deal. After all, the Holy Grail War was about to end. So I'll be the scapegoat this time? Dustless glanced at Alice Phil in annoyance. He said in a troubled and depressed tone. Doesn't that mean that it's useless for me to change rooms? Kuei and Ling will still be with me. That's what I mean. Alice Phil nodded slightly. She looked at Dustless strangely and said, You're just a heroic spirit. Why do you have to care so much? Hey. You're talking as if heroic spirits have no human rights. Dustless made a scary expression. Unexpectedly, Alice Phil did not care. Instead, she made a face at him. She was not afraid of Dustless's threat at all. I'm destined to be the scapegoat this time. Wu Chen looked up to the sky and heaved a long sigh. It was a sad thing to have such a troublemaking master. Scapegoat? It's not as serious as you said. At most, I'll let you be a temporary bodyguard. As if she thought of something, Alice Phil's eyes rolled. She looked like a sly fox. Even though Kuei Dosaka and Toshimi Dosaka have been married for many years, and even had 2 children, we were bathing together just now. I know her figure. Cough, cough, cough. Noticing that Alice Phil was getting further and further away from the topic, Wu Chen couldn't help but cough twice to interrupt Alice Phil's speech. He opened his mouth and deliberately changed the topic to Saber. As you can see, the task of protecting Alice Phil will be handed over to you, Saber. Leave it to me. Also, don't do anything out of line. Otherwise, my sacred sword will go berserk. Saber instantly took out the Excalibur. It invisibly emitted an extraordinary aura. It was full of warnings and threats. This guy is deliberately making things difficult for me. Dustless glared at Alice Phil bitterly. He nodded at Saber and left. Chapter 1703. Time flew by like a white steed flitting by a crack. In the blink of an eye, an hour had passed. Alice Phil persuaded Wu Chen for nearly half an hour. Wu Chen was enlightened and reluctantly agreed to Alice Phil's ridiculous request. In Alice Phil's words, You're a dead spirit. Why do you care so much? Creak. Dustless pushed open the door gently. He thought that Rin and Akui Tosaka were already asleep, but the chandelier in the bedroom and living room were still on. Are they asleep? Why are the lights still on? Dustless shook his head when he realized that there was no movement in the bedroom. He didn't want to disturb the mother and daughter. He sat on the sofa and rested for a while. Then he turned on the TV out of boredom. He turned the volume to the lowest and found a few bags of snacks to pass the time. Dustless accepted Alice Phil's suggestion to protect Rin and Akui Tosaka for the time being. He had to stay close to them. Jiantong Yayan would definitely ask for the mother and daughter back. You pervert, you came back without saying a word. Could it be that you wanted to take advantage of the fact that we were asleep to ambush me and my mother? Pervert. Dustless was stunned when he heard the angry voice. He looked over and saw that it was Rin Tosaka. She snatched Dustless's potato chips and stuffed them into her mouth. Little girl, you can eat whatever you want, but you can't say that. Dustless warned her sternly. He suddenly realized that this girl was too arrogant. Isn't that the truth? None of you heroic spirits are good people. Rin Tosaka crossed her arms and said proudly, you can trample on other people's lives just to satisfy your selfish desires. Even if Yenfen Gili didn't kill my father, the rest of you would. It's just a matter of order. You're quite open-minded. That's what you mean. Dustless didn't comment. Even if Yenfen Gili didn't kill Toshimi Nagasaka in the end, with Kamiya Kissy's personality, he would still order Saber to kill Toshimi Nagasaka. Like Toshimi Nagasaka said, it was just a matter of who came first. But no matter what, my duty now is to protect you and your mother. You can doubt me or hate me. This is already set in stone. Just accept it. Dustless handed Rin Enosaka a bag of snacks, and continued to watch the boring soap opera. You, Rin Enben frowned. Just as he was about to scold Dustless's voice rang out. Instead of scolding me, why don't you console your mother? But she's already asleep, so she can only vent all her anger on you heroic spirits. If it weren't for this disgusting war, Father wouldn't have left us. Rin Enosaka's eyes were red, and he looked like he was about to cry. Idiot. Seeing this, Wu Che scratched Rin Enben's nose and reminded him, a child will always be a child. How can you understand the world of adults? If you were the mother of a child, would you cry in front of the child? This will only hurt the child even more. That's true. Rin Enosaka was stunned when he heard this. He quickly wiped his tears and ran into the room. A brat will always be a brat. His thoughts are indeed too simple. Dustless shook his head as he watched Rin leave. Swish. Swish. Time decelerated. Under the black night sky, a pitch-black monster nimbly shuttled back and forth. He wore black armor, and his mask was embellished with a scarlet glow. He looked extremely terrifying and sinister. Ayo. Especially from his mouth, there were bursts of hissing sounds that made one's heart tremble. His entire body was emitting an unknown black color of disgust. It would not be an exaggeration to say that he was the Grim Reaper. Moreover, he was holding a sharp weapon that emitted cold light in all directions. Bang bang bang. A violent sound rang out. Suddenly, the black shadow smashed through the tempered glass and landed in the brightly lit living room. He then skimmed towards the bedroom with great familiarity. At this moment, an extremely dissatisfied voice rang out. Berserker. That fellow, the Hero King, calling you a mad dog isn't wrong. You sure are a vulgar creature that doesn't know any manners. Even the most ancient king, Gilgamesh, would not ignore my existence when he sees me. Yet you treat me like air. I'm really sorry, Berserker. If you don't leave on your own accord, then I'll force you to leave. You might even lose your life. Dustless, who was lying on the sofa, suddenly opened his eyes. They were also scarlet eyes. In his eye sockets, 3 mysterious tomos slowly rotated, emitting an ominous glow. Compared to the ferocious Berserker, the current Dustless gave off a more terrifying feeling. The former was more like an enraged lion, while the latter gave off the feeling of a cold executioner. Why is this guy here as well? Personal protection? Damn it. Among all the heroic spirits, this 8th heroic spirit is the most difficult to deal with. His strength is ridiculously strong. In the dark forest at the border of the castle, a figure was gasping for breath and wailing in pain. His face was twitching, and under his skin, it was as if there were countless insects scurrying around aimlessly. It was extremely disgusting. This person was Mamatsuki Yayan. When he found out that Akui Tasaka and Rin Tasaka had been taken to the castle of the Ahrensburg family, he rushed over without stopping. His intention was just as Aliceville had guessed, to save the mother and son who had been through a lot. However, to his surprise, he never expected Dustless to be the personal protection. Boom boom boom. An explosion suddenly sounded. The invading berserker was kicked out by Dustless the same way he had invaded. Chapter 1704. Seeing Berserker's figure flying out, Jiantong Yayan was stunned for a moment before he cursed. Berserker is a useless piece of trash. He's good at causing trouble for me, but when he's fighting with the enemy, he can only fight with someone like Archer. Trash. Jiantong Yayan complained loudly in disgust as if Berserker was a nobody that was not worth mentioning. The actual result was not like that. Among all the heroic spirits, Berserker's statistics were considered top-notch. The fact that he could fight with Gold Flash was proof of his strength. Now he was being tortured by Dustless because his opponent was too monstrous. Light speed kick. A laser beam fell on Berserker's body, and his body immediately flew out uncontrollably. Boom boom boom. On the surface it looked like a light kick, but the real power was terrifying. The heavy armor on Berserker's abdomen collapsed due to the direct attack of the light speed kick. Ka ka ka. A large number of pieces of the armor were peeling off. Ka ka ka. The void suddenly cracked, and from the mysterious unknown space, an ancient dark red katana swept out. The blade was red and simple, and just by looking at it, one could feel that it was very hot and fatal, as if he could be burned alive at any time. It was the super soul slasher that could destroy the world, Ryujin Jaka. Berserker, you can still hold on for so long. It's worthy of praise. This is really a miracle. Dustless smacked his lips and nodded with a smile. You can still hold on after taking a light speed kick. Although I don't know how strong your combat power is, I can be sure that your ability to take a beating is definitely second to none. Ow ow ow. Woo woo woo. In the dark, Berserker seemed to have heard Dustless's ridicule clearly. Inside his helmet, there was a roar that sounded like a human. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Then, he turned into a gust of black wind and pounced straight at Dustless. Boom boom boom. The two immediately engaged in close combat, and bright sparks kept flickering. This is a good chance. Now that the 8th heroic spirit is being held back by Berserker, I can go find Kuei Helen, and take advantage of this rare opportunity to rescue Kuei Helen and her daughter. Seeing this, Jiantong Yayan was overjoyed. Looking at Berserker, who was fighting Dustless, he sighed in his heart. This heroic spirit, who always liked to attract hatred, had done its job this time. While the two were fighting, Tong Yayan dragged his exhausted body and hurriedly slipped to Kuei and Ling's room. It was extremely difficult for him to walk, and he even fell down several times along the way. There was nothing he could do about it. All his energy had been sucked away by the worms wandering in his body. Now he was just a shell that could control oil. Phew. Thank goodness Berserker is here. Otherwise, with the existence of the 8th heroic spirit, I would never be able to reach this door. 10 minutes later, Jiantong Yayan finally came to Dustless's room and found Ling and Kuei's room. I'm relieved to be praised by you. But, is it really okay for you to ignore me like this? Jiantong Yayan was shocked by the sudden voice. He turned his head and saw Wu Chen, who looked lazy. He was sitting on the sofa, eating potato chips and drinking Coke. He looked very leisurely and comfortable. Impossible, you should be fighting Berserker. Why are you here now? Staring at Dustless, who was fighting Berserker not far away, Tong Yayan glanced at Dustless, who was eating chips. He rubbed his eyes to make sure he was not seeing things. He was shocked to find that there were two Dustless in front of him. Idiot, the one fighting Berserker is just my shadow clone. Dustless glanced at the shocked Tong Yayan and showed a look of disdain. Berserker would have a hard time dealing with my doppelganger, let alone my real body. I purposely suppressed the strength of my doppelganger, so that Berserker could stall it. My main purpose was to lure you out. As I expected, you really fell for it. How pathetic. Tong Yayan was furious when he heard Wu Chen's words. He stared at Wu Chen's mocking face. He felt that his dignity and IQ had been trampled on by this abominable guy. A mere heroic spirit dares to trick me? Eat him up. In his anger, Jiantong Yayan suddenly waved his big hand. His skin suddenly burst open and countless larvae broke out from his skin. There were dozens or even hundreds of larvae that came to bite Wu Chun. The buzzing sound was unbearable. Being stared at by countless man-eating insects, no one could laugh it off. You're overestimating yourself. Dustless snorted and rolled his eyes. His pupils emitted a ferocious aura. At the same time, a strong wave of Ryatsu erupted from his body. Puchi, puchi, puchi. All kinds of disgusting insects wandering in the space collapsed in an instant and turned into blood. The disgusting smell was as unbearable as the smell on Tong Yiyan's body. Stupid thing, Tong Yiyan. Have your intelligence been eaten by insects? You want to use such a rubbish trick to deal with a heroic spirit? Do you think I'm a small character like Tashimi Nagasaka? Chapter 1705. Hearing Dustless's mocking words, Jiotong Yayan was enraged. After all, the so-called heroic spirits were just tools used by the masters. No matter how strong they were still just tools. Just like Lancer and Kenneth in the original novel. Lancer's combat power was amazing, and he even injured Saber. However, as the master, Kenneth ordered Lancer to commit suicide. Lancer couldn't escape his tragic fate, and was killed by his own gun in the end. Damn you, you're just a heroic spirit. How dare you be so arrogant when you're already dead? Suddenly, Jiotong Yayan realized that Akui and Rin were still in the castle. Jiotong Yayan, who was in despair, suddenly regained his strength. The mother and daughter were his spiritual sustenance. Therefore, Jiotong Yayan's little universe exploded again. Crack, crack, crack. Jiotong Yayan's skin exploded again, and the insects that were hidden deep inside his body flew out again. These insects were abnormally fat. It was obvious that Jiotong Yayan's body was a feast for them. Disgusting things. Dustless's face turned even colder. He quickly formed a hand seal, and a huge fireball flew out. Fire release, great fireball technique. Boom boom boom. In an instant, the insects that were flying towards Jiotong Yayan turned into dust and disappeared without a trace. Puchi. Tong Yayan was forced to use his strength again and again. In the end he fell against the wall. His throat rolled a few times, and then he spat out a mouthful of bright red blood. There were also a few insects coming out of his mouth. How rude of you to dirty someone's room with such disgusting things. Especially when there are two ladies living here. Didn't your father, Jiotong Yayan, teach you manners? Leaning on the sofa, Dustless lazily stared at Jiotong Yayan. He also threw the potato chips aside. Even though the tempered glass was broken and the whole room was very cool, the disgusting smell still lingered in the room. Dustless also lost his appetite. Do you really want Akui and Rin to live in peace forever? Dustless glanced at Jiotong Yayan and stared at his crazy face. His voice then sank. Or is it just your rationality that's causing trouble? Do you simply want to possess the mother and daughter? Bullshit. Hearing this, Jiotong Yayan flew into a rage and roared. I regard Ling and Kuei as my family. How could I do such a thing? Don't slander me. I participated in this Holy Grail war because I don't want them to continue following that scumbag Tashimi. Is that so? Then I'll take back what I said earlier. By the way, I'd like to apologize. In other words, your only wish is for Kuei and Ling to live on without any worries, right? Dustless asked with a smile. He looked harmless, but deep in his eyes there was a scheming light. Of course. For this goal, even if I have to sacrifice my life, I won't hesitate. Jiotong Yayan, who was physically exhausted, finally knelt on the ground. He gritted his teeth and his eyes were filled with determination. Wow, it's rare to see such a great person like you. I can't help but admire you. Dustless continued to smile, and then he instigated. However, even if I give the mother and daughter to you, what kind of protection can you give them? After you die, where can they go? Do you still need to say that? Of course it's the Jiotong family. The two of them are going to live there for the rest of their lives, living a carefree and stable life like Sakura. Jiotong Yayan answered without hesitation. Then here comes the problem. I don't need to say it. You know what kind of person Jiotong Yayan is. For the Holy Grail, that guy is crazy. An Ling is a genius with an extremely high magical talent. Do you think Jiantong Yayan will overturn her? Jiantong Yayan, you are pushing the mother and daughter into the fire pit. Dustless's voice seemed to contain magic, making Jiantong Yayan roll his eyes and fall silent. What do you want to say? Staring at Dustless, Jiantong Yayan keenly realized that Dustless's words had other meanings. But it was undeniable that what he said made sense. With Jiantong Yayan's personality, he would never let Ling and Kuei go. It was equivalent to pushing the mother and daughter into a merciless sea of fire. I can give the mother and daughter to you. But the premise is, you have to kill your biological father, Jiantong Yayan. That guy won't let Ling and Kuei go easily. Unless you kill that old man, I can only give you Kuei and Ling's protection. Dustless said sincerely. Kill him? Jiantong Yayan was touched when he heard that. In his mind, a terrible old man at the end of his life appeared. His hoarse laughter lingered in his heart for a long time, forming a shadow pattern that was difficult to get rid of. Yes, after you die, that old man won't die. After this Holy Grail, there will be the next Holy Grail War. Maybe that old man will use some evil means. Enough, I agree to your conditions. A raging light flashed in the depths of his eyes. Jiantong Yayan finally gritted his teeth and agreed to Dustless's conditions. At the same time he roared, I will go back and kill that old man Jiantong Yayan now. I hope you will abide by the agreement when the time comes. As soon as he finished speaking, Jiantong Yayan dragged his tired body and left. Before he left, he did not forget to glance at the room where Ling and Kuei were sleeping soundly. A layer of transparent enchantment was clearly visible. Even though it was as thin as a cicada's wing, even though it was close at hand, it was still at the end of the world for Jiantong Yayan. No wonder you were used. You are so naive. Even if you kill that old man, I won't give the mother and daughter to you. Jiantong Yayan, just like you said before, after all, I am just a Sandvart. The decision is in Aliceville's hands. With a devilish smile, Dustless finally closed his eyes. Chapter 1706. Jiantong Family. Jiantong Yayan returned to his bedroom in a daze. He pushed the door open and planned to lie down on the bed to rest for a while. Unexpectedly, a mysterious figure hit him with a stick. Bang! A heavy stick hit him and Jiantong Yayan was instantly smashed to the ground. A huge red mark appeared on his forehead where he was hit. Jiantong Yayan turned his head and looked at him fiercely. Jiantong Xinyan, be careful. Be careful. I will kill you. Trash like you? Yayan, since when did you like to boast so shamelessly? After being a hero spirit for a while, you still have confidence. Jiantong Xinyan walked out of the darkness with a walking stick. His eyes were shining like a ghost. It was creepy. His evil and bright eyes looked like a smart and cunning demon. Jiantong Xinyan, let Sakura go immediately. Changing the topic, Tong Yayan used all of his strength to turn around and announce in an extremely cold tone. You better know your place before I make a decision. Decision? What do you want to decide? Yayan, I don't understand where your confidence comes from. Just based on your current half-dead state? You better know your place and help me get the Holy Grail. In that case, I can let Sakura go. If you fail, I can only apologize. Jiantong Xinyan sat on the sofa calmly and looked at Jiantong Yayan, who was sweating profusely. He sneered and said, It is impossible for you to get the Holy Grail in your current state. In this case, Sakura can't give up. Old man, you still haven't given up on Sakura? Jiantong Yayan glared at him. His face was cold. Are you going to break the agreement? Agreement? Ridiculous. If you really remember the agreement, you should remember to help me get the Holy Grail. If you fail, the agreement will be invalid. Jiantong Xinyan turned his face shamelessly. You bastard, how dare you? Jiantong Yayan clenched his fists when he heard that. The veins on his forehead bulged. The insects that had disappeared were running around in his skin again. Do you want to be rough with me? With your level? Before we fight, I have to warn you that if you use your heroic spirit rashly, you'll definitely die. Jiantong Xinyan kindly reminded him that he had not obtained the Holy Grail yet. Naturally, he did not want Jiantong Yayan to die just like that. I'll drag you down with me, berserker. But Tong Yiyan didn't care. He shouted, and a black skeleton knight appeared in front of him. He said coldly, that guy is right. As long as I get rid of you, everything will be over. That guy. Tong Zongyan was stunned when he heard this. He was secretly annoyed. A rare flame swept through his rotten heart. Someone actually taught his son to kill his father. It was extremely ironic. Ow 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 ow. Berserker let out his signature low growl and rushed to Zongyan Jiantong without hesitation. The big sword in his right hand was the first to cut a cold light into the void. Poochie. Tong Zongyan's body was cut open by Berserker mercilessly. However, there was no blood flowing out as expected. After the old man was cut, his body turned into a large number of flying insects and scattered in all directions. Humph, old man, you run fast. Tong Yiyan snorted angrily. He dragged his exhausted body and ran around like a headless fly, looking for traces of Xiaoying. Damn it, which bastard dares to trick my son to kill me? If I find out, I'll definitely let him know the pain of being bitten by thousands of insects. In the gloomy underground warehouse, there were insects everywhere. There were so many of them that they almost covered the entire ground. TSK, old man, do you hate me that much? A sloppy voice suddenly sounded. Tong Zongyan was shocked. He suddenly turned his head, and an unexpected figure was fixed in his eyes. The short black hair was messy, but there was a trace of elegance in it. Those dark eyes were eternal and unforgettable. Especially the smile on the corner of his mouth. It made Tong Zongyan even more furious. It was as if he was looking at a clown. It made his face gloomy. The eighth heroic spirit? Are you the one who instigated Yiyan to kill me? Glaring at Dustless, Tong Zongyan said hoarsely. That idiot was deceived by an outsider. His IQ is even lower than Xiaoying's. Useless trash. Ayaya, if Yiyan finds out that you're scolding your son like this, he'll be very sad. However, there's one thing I agree with. He can't even kill a terminally ill old man. That guy is really not suitable to be a master. He's indeed useless. Dustless agreed with Tong Zongyan's opinion. So you're going to personally lead the army to kill me? Tong Zongyan's eyes were cold. He said, it's not that easy to kill me. After all, whoosh whoosh whoosh. Before the old man finished speaking, Dustless turned into a ray of light and appeared in front of him. Then, the scorching heaven sort of clouds slashed down. Poochie. The golden light penetrated Tong Zongyan's body. From his forehead to his lower body, he was cut open by Dustless. His eyes were staring straight at the indifferent face of Dustless. It seemed that he was unwilling to die. Old man, you can rest in peace. Glancing faintly at Tong Zongyan, this guy's body immediately burned automatically. Amaterasu. The black fire engulfed Tong Zongyan's whole body and annihilated him in an instant. Finally, all the insects in the warehouse were burned by Dustless. I still have to take Xiaoying away. Shaking his head in distress, his observation haki spread out, and Dustless began to look for Sakura's traces. This is what Koei Inosaka begged. Anyway, I'm bored, so I might as well help her. Dustless suddenly felt Tong Zongyan's house because he suddenly thought of a big problem. He didn't have time to ask before letting Tong Zongyan leave. Chapter 1707. In the dark courtyard, the path led to a secluded place. Under the moonlight, the lights were blurry. Sakura. Seeing the filthy light, Jiantong Yiyan was overjoyed. He dragged his body and rushed over. He could see Sakura's residence in the Jiantong family. Take Sakura away. Even if I die, I can rest in peace. A satisfied smile appeared on his pale face. To Jiantong Yiyan, the most important people in his life were Xiaoying, Koei Tasaka, and Rin Tasaka. TSK, what a touching relationship, Yiyan. A mocking tone came from the sky. When he was about to reach Sakura's room, a black shadow blocked his way. It was the last person Jiantong Yiyan wanted to see in his life. He was second only to Toshiomi Inaka. What are you doing in our house, you despicable fellow? You are not welcome here. Jiantong Yiyan's face was full of bad luck. His tone was full of disgust and fear. Not welcome? That's not up to you. I came here to ask you something. I also agreed to Sakura's request to take her away. Looking at Jiantong Yayan's disgusted expression, Dustless was as calm as a breeze. He did not care. In this world, there were many people who hated him and did not like him. But in the end, there was only one ending: death. Did Sakura agree? Jiantong Yayan did not refute. He knew that Sakura had always been in Sakura's heart. However, Toshiomi Inaka was too cold. Sakura had no right to speak. Moreover, the magician family was only allowed to have one legal heir. In the end, Sakura was given to the Jiantong family. What do you think I am planning? Also, I just killed your cheap father, Jiantong Yayan. That old man raised a bunch of worms. It's disgusting. The fat worms appeared in his mind. Dustless looked disgusted. Mind your own business. Even if you don't intervene, I will kill that damn old man. Jiantong Yayan did not thank Dustless. Instead, he scolded Dustless. You won't be able to last long in this state. Before that, I have a question that I want you to answer. After organizing his thoughts, Dustless's mind became active. When he was in the castle of the Ahrensberg family, he had neglected this important issue. How did you know that Rin Tasaka and Kue Tasaka are with the Ahrensberg family? Although the Tong family is very well informed, and I don't think you've been to the Einsbalen family, when you went to the castle just now, you were so familiar with it that you didn't even waste any time. You immediately confirmed that the mother and daughter were in my room. Of course, that's what Wei Gong Chisi told me. Sitting on the ground tiredly, Jiantong Yayan explained. Wei Gong Chisi, that despicable fellow, hopes to use Kue and Ling as the price in exchange for our cooperation to eliminate Yanfeng Chili and his archer. No wonder you're so familiar with that castle. Dustless suddenly understood. No matter how despicable Wei Gong Chisi was, he didn't care. A person who was twisted by so-called justice would do anything crazy. Is that so? Then I have something important to tell you. The corners of Wu Chen's mouth curled into a treacherous arc as he said, Wei Gong Chisi, that fellow. Previously, he still hoped to kill Kue He Ling. Letting him live is definitely a big problem. Why don't you go and kill that fellow? Did I hear wrongly? You want me to kill Wei Gong Chisi? Her eyes were fixed on Dustless. Jiantong Yayan felt that her brain wasn't enough. This guy in front of her wanted her to kill Wei Gong Chisi. Did he not know what this meant? If things went wrong, Wei Gong Chisi's heroic spirit, Saber, would disappear. Are you willing to do that? That fellow is a huge threat to Ling and Kue if he's alive. Dustless increased his tone and said, I don't mind telling you directly. That fellow is actually a pervert and a sex fiend. He is. Enough. I promise you that I'll kill that fellow Wei Gong Chisi. She glanced at Xiao Ying's room with a reluctant expression. But in the end, she gritted her teeth and left. Idiot, you think you can kill Wei Gong Chisi with just you? That fellow has Saber's protection. Furthermore, Wei Gong Chisi is an extremely cunning and sinister person. Dustless shook his head and turned to Xiao Ying's room. Creak. The door was gently pushed open by Dustless. Unexpectedly, before Dustless could take the initiative to summon her, a tender and soft fist smashed towards Dustless's face. Bang. Dustless casually raised his hand to block the fist. He frowned slightly. The person who attacked him was Jiantong Yayan. Her eyes were empty and lifeless. She was like a walking corpse without any vitality. Grandpa said that other than him, anyone who dares to approach me is a bad person. Xiaoying muttered vaguely. There was no emotion in her voice. She looked like a zombie. Has she been brainwashed? Dustless raised his eyebrows when he saw this, and then he remembered the character of Jiantong Yayan. He couldn't help but say strangely, that old man wants Xiaoying to kill Jiantong Yayan? As expected, he's an old monster. Bang. Dustless knocked Xiaoying unconscious with a karate chop. He tried to use the Tensigen to modify Xiao Ying's memory and erase the tragic memory of the Jiantong family from the depths of her soul. Hehe, I hope that Jiantong Yayan can cut off Wei Gong Chisi's hand. It's best to make him disabled, so that he won't be scheming all day long. Dustless left the Jiantong family with Xiaoying in his arms and quickly rushed to the castle of the Ahrensberg family. He had a feeling that Jiantong Yayan will definitely teach Wei Gong Chisi a lesson. Chapter 1708. In the forest near the castle of the Ahrensburg family. You are too reckless. That Dustless is very powerful. I am sure that even Saber would not be able to defeat him, let alone your berserker. In the dark forest, a few figures could be vaguely seen. Jiantongyan, let's come up with another plan. I will help you sneak Katsuki Tasaka and Rin Tasaka away. As a price, you have to help me kill Yanfeng and Chili. Wei Gongqi looked at the white-haired Jiantongyan and suddenly felt that something was wrong with him. This guy's eyes. Something is wrong. Looking at Jiantongyan and Berserker who was beside him, Wei Gongqi was not worried. He could summon Saber here instantly with a command spell. No, I have changed my plan. He sinisterly approached Wei Gongqi. Tongyan's calm eyes instantly turned scarlet. His killing intent was completely revealed and filled with a frightening killing intent. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. Suddenly, Jiantongyan attacked relentlessly. His body turned into a gust of wind and pounced on Wei Gongqi, who was still in a daze. Gulp. He grabbed Wei Gongqi's vital part mercilessly. What are you trying to do? Realizing that his vital part as a man was being grabbed, Wei Gongqi shivered and looked at Jiantongyan, who was in a frenzy. You bastard pervert, I will take you down with me even if I die. Jiantongyan's veins were bulging on his right hand as he increased his strength. This guy is so evil. He wants Wei Gongqi, but can't be a man? Dustless was speechless. He thought that Jiantongyan would just cripple Wei Gongqi. He did not expect Jiantongyan to be so ruthless. He wanted to crush Wei Gongqi's balls. No, I have to help Jiantongyan once. I like this kind of method. Dustless laughed. He knew that Jiantongyan had mastered some special magic. He might be able to turn back time. If that was the case, Jiantongyan's sneak attack would have been wasted. If that's the case, then I'll. Dustless focused on Wei Gongqi's body, purposely avoiding the fatal wound. He mercilessly threw out a pitch-black dagger towards Wei Gongqi's body. Swish. Swish. The tip of the pitch-black dagger was shining with a cold light. This is bad. That bastard Jiantongyan actually has an accomplice. Hearing the sharp sound behind him, Wei Gongqi turned his head and saw a dagger emitting a cold light. Immediately his heart turned cold. Just as he was about to cast a spell to dodge, it was already too late. The merciless cold light pierced through Wei Gongqi's body, causing blood to flow out. Although he wanted to kill this bastard, Dustless had to admit that if he lost Wei Gongqi, Saber would immediately collapse and disappear. Poochie. The dagger pierced through his body, leaving a bloody hole. However, because Dustless had purposely avoided the vital parts, Wei Gongqi's injuries weren't too serious. Poochie. At the same time, seeing this rare opportunity, Jiantongyan also launched a fatal attack. He clenched his fist and crushed Wei Gongqi's balls. From now on, there was one less man in the world, and one more eunuch. Gongqi was in so much pain that his head was covered in sweat. His crotch was covered in fresh blood. He fell to the ground and howled in pain. His scarlet eyes stared at Jiantongyan, wishing that he could turn him into a human stick. This ridiculous bastard. First, he scolded him for being a perverted pervert. Now he crippled him. Wei Gongqi's heart was deeply traumatized. I will definitely kill you. Definitely. Wei Gongqi roared in his heart. He swore that he had never wanted to kill someone as much as he did now. It was all because of this bastard in front of him that he could no longer be a man. Wei Gongqi wanted to cry, but no tears came out. This was a great humiliation to him. It was even more humiliating than what he had accumulated in his life, especially when he was inexplicably crippled by Jiantongyan. Wei Gongqi felt very wronged by being called a perverted pervert. He didn't do anything worse than a beast, but he had become such a scapegoat. He even had the thought of dying. Well done. Dustless was full of smiles. He had never realized that Jiantongyan was so cute. Pung pung pung. A series of messy footsteps suddenly sounded. Dustless raised his head and saw an untimely figure. Her panicked face stared at the blood on Wei Gongqi's crotch in disbelief. She then looked at Jiantong Yeyen, who had a crazed expression, and suddenly understood something. "Jiwumi? This fellow really likes to meddle in other people's business." Dustless frowned inwardly. He was rather dissatisfied with her appearance. He then lowered his head and pondered for a moment. In the end, he rushed out from the darkness. Not only that, Saber also rushed over. Alice and Phil also did the same. Wei Gongqi's heart-wrenching scream just now was too heart-wrenching. What a pity. I let go of a chance to torture Wei Gongqi. Sigh. Dustless smacked his lips and sighed in pity. Looking at Saber's humiliated appearance, he knew that she would not let Jiantong Yeyen off so easily. After all, although Wei Gongqi was a rotten person, he was still Saber's master. If Jiantong Yeyen was allowed to leave, Saber's dignity would also be damaged. Chapter 1709. Qixi, are you alright? Alice Phil came over and asked with concern. Looking at the blood that stained his pants, her face was filled with embarrassment. Alice Phil, don't worry. Qixi has only become a eunuch. It's not a big deal. You know that he has strong willpower. You don't have to comfort him. He will be able to pull through. Dustless's weird voice rang out. Damn it. No matter how strong your willpower is, you can't take this lying down. Why don't you try? Don't just stand there and talk. Qixi, who was already furious, was enraged by Dustless's words. He roared at Dustless. Have you caught the despicable person who plotted against me? I must tear him into pieces. The person who plotted against you? Saber revealed an ashamed expression and said apologetically. Master, I'm sorry. The mysterious person who plotted against you. When I rushed over, there was no trace of anyone else. He might have run away. Run away? Useless fellow. Glancing at Saber coldly, Wei Gongqi did not say anything. You. Saber frowned and looked at the furious Wei Gongqi. She was also dissatisfied and said angrily in her heart. If you didn't come out on your own, how could this have happened? Now, other than the problem, you are blaming others? Disgusting. Unknowingly, Saber started to have bad intentions towards Wei Gongqi. She felt that she had to explain to him. The corner of her mouth twitched. Just as she was about to argue with Wei Gongqi, a thumb blocked Saber's lips. Saber, you are just a heroic spirit. No matter how you explain, it will be your fault in the end. Dustless shook his head, indicating to Saber that there was no need to say more. The furious Wei Gongqi would not listen. It was just a waste of time. But this fellow is really despicable. I have told Wei Gongqi time and time again not to act alone. Now that there is a problem, he was even turned into. Glancing at Wei Gongqi, Saber's face turned slightly red, and the words that were about to come out of her mouth turned into a smile. Hee hee. Dustless smiled maliciously and cleared his throat. He looked at Wei Gongqi and encouraged him. Qixi, isn't it just having your balls crushed? I believe that you can definitely handle it. The voice that filled the entire sky lingered in the void for a long time, as if it wanted to spread throughout the entire world. You bastard. Wei Gongqi's face turned green when he heard this. How could such a thing be said so casually? Staring at Dustless, who was shouting at the top of his lungs, as if he wanted the whole world to know that he was a eunuch, Wei Gongqi wanted to strangle this bastard Dustless to death. Why didn't you use a loudspeaker to publicize it? Saber, get rid of Berserker and his master, Yadongyeyan. Remember, don't kill this brat. I want to repay this brat 100-fold and let him understand my pain. His eyes flickered with the light of revenge as Wei Gongqi roared crazily. Because of Yadongyeyan, his self-esteem had suffered a serious blow. If he didn't get rid of him, he wouldn't be able to live in peace for the rest of his life. I will bring you back for now. Alice Phil glanced at Wei Gongqi with a complicated gaze, and carefully supported him. Looking at that crazy face, Alice Phil gradually distanced herself from Wei Gongqi. I'm sorry, Jiantong Yeyen. Your usefulness ends here. Dustless and Saber blocked in front of Yadongyeyan and thought to themselves, since you will die no matter what, let me give you a dignified death, so that you won't be captured alive by Wei Gongqi and receive the same punishment as him. You bastard. Yadong Yayan's expression froze. Looking at Dustless's calm face, he asked, "Shameless, don't tell me you want to." Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Before Yadong Yayan could finish his words, a ray of light suddenly attacked. Dustless's broad hand directly grabbed Yadong Yayan's head. Woo 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 woo. Yadong Yayan's mouth was also blocked by Dustless, making it difficult for him to speak. "Kill you, I must kill you. How dare you betray me?" Yadong Yayan roared crazily in his heart. His scarlet eyes were filled with killing intent. He didn't expect Dustless to be so dustless. He had clearly said that he would take care of Wei Gong Qixi. This shameless bastard. Who would have thought that this bastard would actually betray him now? Putting aside the previous agreement, with his current attitude, he even wanted to kill Yadong Yayan to silence him. He didn't want him to tell the truth. "Your eyes are really scary. In fact, you don't have to hate me so much." Dustless leaned close to Yadong Yayan's ear, and said in a voice that only the two of them could hear, "I think you should thank me, your savior. I will take care of Kuei, Ling and Sakura in the future. Farewell, Yadong Yayan." As soon as he finished speaking, Dustless's strength exploded. He also increased the strength of his face that was grabbing Yadong Yayan's head. Ka ka ka. One could hear the sound of bones breaking. That pair of big hands crushed the skin on Yadong Yayan's face. Blood kept flowing. No, it was too much to say that it was blood. The skin on his cheeks burst. Other than blood, there was also a large number of fat worms flowing out. "Bastard, I can't let this guy go so easily." Yadong Yayan was furious. He clenched his fists and roared in his heart, "Berserker, tear this guy into pieces. Tear him into pieces." Ow 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 ow. Receiving Yadong Yayan's order, Berserker roared towards the sky and attacked. Chapter 17:10. Berserker's strength was actually not bad. Among the heroic spirits, his stats were considered outstanding. However, he was not very lucky this time. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. Berserker attacked Dustless with his sword. The sharp edge of the sword slashed down horizontally, carrying the anger of Jiantong Yayan. It looked like he was going to cut Dustless in half. Clang clang. A dull roar spread out, and a spark appeared in an instant. Berserker's fatal attack was also blocked. A delicate and seemingly weak figure stepped forward without hesitation. At the critical moment, Saber's Excalibur blocked the dangerous cold light. "Ah, what a scary heroic spirit," Dustless said in a frivolous tone, but his face was expressionless. "Leave this guy to me. Berserker gives me a feeling of déjà vu." Saber stared at the black-armored swordsman in front of her cautiously and suspiciously. She actually had some impression of his seemingly messy swordsmanship. "Do whatever you want. Just don't let this guy run away." Dustless gave Saber a reassuring look, and his teasing gaze fell on Jiantong Yayan again. Clang 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 clang. Under the night sky, two agile and vigorous figures fought with all their strength. Every time their swords collided, there would be dazzling sparks. King Arthur. Berserker always let out a vague and hoarse roar from his throat. It was as low and terrifying as a beast. What a troublesome guy. Saber forced Berserker back with both hands. Every time she slashed, she used all her strength. The person who was in the way is gone. Dustless saw this and sighed heavily. He immediately looked up and stared at the angry Jiantong Yayan. He smiled unscrupulously. "Don't show such an angry expression. If you don't control your emotions, the worms in your body will consume you faster. I will be very sad if you die. After all, we are allies, Yan." "Humph, put away that hypocritical smile of yours. If you were betrayed and abandoned like trash after being used by others, how would you feel?" Jiantong Yayan asked. "You are such a cunning person. I will not let you go even if I become a ghost." "Really? Then I'll make sure you can't even be a ghost." Dustless snorted indifferently. Then he sneered and said, "If I crush your body and soul, I'll see how you're going to take revenge on me." Puchi, Puchi, Puchi. Tong Yayan clenched his teeth when he heard Yi Chen's words. The skin all over his body burst open. Hundreds and thousands of fat teeth opened up and bit towards Yi Chen. A deathbed struggle. When Dustless saw this, he glanced at the group of engraved worms and rolled his eyes. The fire that was not there started burning without any sign. Tensho. In the blink of an eye, the fire annihilated all the insects. Not even the residue was left. They evaporated into thin air. Not only that, under the control of Dustless, the black ominous fire spread to the head of Jiantong Yayan. It hurts. What kind of willow? The wisp is this. It couldn't be extinguished. D***it. Jiantong Yayan screamed in pain and fear. He fell to the ground and rolled violently. He tried to put out the fire on his body, but the reality was too cruel. Not only did the fire show no sign of extinguishing, but as time went by, it gradually became bigger and bigger. In the end, it swallowed him whole in an instant. This fire is called Tensho. You want to extinguish it? How stupid you are. Didn't I just say that I'm going to burn your soul? Dustless said in a cold tone. He did not have a good impression of Jiantong Yayan. Jiantong Yayan said that he liked Isaka Kue, but the person who killed Isaka Kue was actually this guy. He was a real hypocrite. Your soul has been burned by Tensho. I'll see how you won't let me go even if you become a ghost. Looking at Jiantong Yayan, who was screaming in pain, Dustless had a pleasant expression on his face. Jiantong Yayan's screams, which sounded like he wanted to die, sounded very funny to Dustless. After about a minute, Jiantong Yayan's screams gradually died down. The night sky returned to its peaceful state. Looking up at the sky, the stars in the galaxy were shining brightly. The night sky was beautiful. There shouldn't be any problems over there, right? As far as his eyes could see, in the dark forest, there were two shadows fighting against each other. Every move and every collision would cost the lives of both parties. Forget it. I'm bored anyway. Let's go take a look. Dustless was humming a tune. His skinny body walked past Jiantong Yayan, who was now a mummy. He walked straight to the place where Spare and Berserker were fighting. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. With a gentle breeze, Jiantong Yayan's body was completely eroded. He turned into black powder and disappeared with the wind. His name was completely erased from the world. Berserker has quite a lot of mana stored in his body. Even though Jiantong Yayan, the master, is dead, this guy can still continue to fight with Saber. However, it's only a matter of time before he loses. Even though the master was dead, Sarvant would not disappear in a short period of time. As long as he had enough mana in his body, it would not be a problem for him to last for a few days. Once his magic power was exhausted, Sarvant would vanish and evaporate. You're tuning in to the Echoes of the Heart YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.